My name is Jordan Richter. I'm an investigative journalist for an independent media outlet. Ever since I had to use my wits, an old tape recorder, and some fake weed I made from my mother's arugula plant to catch a few bullies in their lies back in middle school, I've been obsessed with exposing corruption. I've spent years chasing the truth, going undercover, and even doing some modest hacking. Mostly, I do political stuff, scandals, cover-ups, bribery. Every politician has a skeleton in their closet, and if you look hard enough, they usually have a few dozen. It's not out of the ordinary for people to send me evidence of bad behavior on a potential suspect, like hotel receipts, photos, bank statements, that kind of thing. Don't get me wrong, I never publish anything I get without verifying it. I always look at every case as hearsay until proven correct. You can really mess up someone's life with a false accusation, and as someone who's been through that twice, I don't want to be that guy. Besides, sometimes the stuff people send in is just too vague, not convincing, or obviously faked. But every once in a while, I find something really deep, something my editor would call beyond the pale, something dark. This is one of those times. I recently received a recording and transcript of a phone call that the whistleblower, who chose to remain anonymous, secretly recorded and sent to me via email. The first time I listened to it, I was shocked and had to re-listen several times just to be sure I heard it right. Due to technical difficulties with the recording, I can't post it here, but I can share the transcript. If what is contained within is even remotely true, then anyone who lives in Barron County, Ohio needs to get in contact with either their local travel agent or perhaps a National Guard unit. The following is the transcript, exactly how it was sent to me, word for word. The recording begins. The sound of a phone ringing can be heard before a handset is picked up with a soft click and a man speaks. Voice 1.
Sheriff's office. How may I help you, sir, or...
A second man's voice can be heard shouting through the phone. Voice 2.
Or no, what the hell is going on in your district?
A chair creaks, and it sounds as though Voice 1 is clearing his throat. Voice 1.
Mr. Caranti,
Voice 2.
Shut your mouth before I shut it for you. Don't you know not to use my name on the phone, you hopeless lump? I gave you a job to do. One job. And now I'm hearing all kinds of things about things going wrong down there. You think my group funded your campaign so these kinds of mistakes could happen?
Voice 1.
Sir, I assure you, my deputies are doing everything we can to.
Voice 2.
Your deputies? Do you have any idea what I just got done reading? One of your loudmouth deputies has been babbling online about seeing a techno in the freaking woods. Thousands of people viewed his post, or not. If just one of them does any amount of digging, our entire operation could be jeopardized.
The sound of a pencil snapping in half can be heard. Voice 1.
I'll find the responsible man and deal with him, sir. It won't happen again.
Voice 2.
It better not. As for the park, why didn't you seize control of New Wilderness like I directed? We need that installation as a base for operations, and those two-bit rangers are still running around, firing guns everywhere, stirring up the herds, and causing the anomalies to migrate. I want them gone, Werner. I don't care how you do it. Just get rid of them.
Voice 1.
Sir, with all due respect, the Night Rangers outnumber us 2-1, and they're the only ones keeping the technos and organics at bay. I've lost 2 men already to the Echo Spiders, and we can barely keep the roads blocked as it is. Civilians are finding their way in, and every one of them that survives has to be silenced or discredited. I need more men.
Voice 2.
I have 1,000 of my best fighters on standby as we speak, but I need live specimens or not. The more the merrier, and we can't get them if those polo shirt wearing rent-a-cops are killing them all. Ever since that Cromwell girl popped the last Oak Walker, we've had nothing but spikes in the electromagnetic satellite readings from your area. Time is of the essence if we want to contain this thing. Arrest the Night Rangers, clear the New Wilderness Wildlife Reserve of all personnel and prepare the site for LSAR to move in.
Voice 1.
If I move on the park, the rangers might resist. I know the head of security there, and that old marine won't give up without a fight. This could spark a real shooting war right in our backyard, and if the public finds out.
Voice 2.
If the public finds out that there are moon-eyed fucks stumbling around in the woods, they'll start the shooting war themselves. For God's sake, Sheriff, use your head for something other than a hat rack. You want to flush the rangers out? Drive a herd into them, and let the freaks do their job. Once everyone's dead, we'll come in and clean up. No one will ever have to know it was you.
Voice 1.
Look, this would be a whole lot easier if we had more help. I'm not a miracle worker, and rumors spread every time we take another casualty on the force. It's a small county, sir, with even smaller towns. All it takes is one person talking, and I can't contain it. Just give me 50 guys, kitted out and ready to go, and at least then we can man the roadblocks.
There is a long pause, and a clock can be heard ticking in the background. Voice 2.
Fine, I can send 50, but no more until the LZ is clear. The situation is rapidly deteriorating, and the more men we move, the more attention we'll attract. If we can't seal the breach soon, we could face an ecological disaster that would make Chernobyl look like Christmas in the Bahamas. I don't need to remind you what we'll be forced to do if that happens.
Voice 1.
Clean sweep.
Voice 2.
Exactly. I won't risk creating another Black Crow Island. The press is distracted by the upcoming elections right now, but if we make one slip up, we'll have reporters and homegrown watchdogs breathing down our necks all across the country. We cannot afford another disaster zone, especially not after what happened in Canada.
Voice 1.
I understand, sir. As soon as the reinforcements arrive, I'll have New Wilderness captured for you within a week. 3 days tops.
Voice 2.
Time is critical, Warnaw. Do not disappoint me on this. Get control of your department. Shut the Night Rangers down, and keep the anomalies contained until we get there. I'll work on suppressing any more online activity regarding your area, and run some interference in case a few wannabe private eyes start Googling things they shouldn't.
Voice 1.
Yes, sir.
Voice 2.
Oh, and one more thing. The leak in your department, it's some moron named Hammond. I don't care how you do it, or where. Just make him disappear. Now.
Voice 1.
Hammond, huh? I should have known. Believe me, sir, it's as good as done.
There is a muted click from the other end of the line, and the recording ends. Naturally, I dove into the internet and started hunting for information as soon as I read the transcript. Try as I might, I couldn't find anything about a Barron County, Ohio in the mainstream press or on any map anywhere. There is a Barron County in Wisconsin, but nowhere in the foothills of Appalachia, almost as if it's been selectively deleted from every record available. As for the New Wilderness Wildlife Reserve, I did manage to locate its homepage just before a strange computer glitch made it unavailable. Just last week, the park announced it wouldn't be holding a tour season this year and that all grounds were closed to the public. It also issued a call for more volunteers for its security department, offering a whopping $40 an hour to anyone who stayed there longer than a week, along with free room and board. Sadly, I didn't get the chance to find any contact information, the site crashing in what I suspect was a coordinated DDoS attack from an unknown source. What really stood out to me about the whole thing was the capitalization of the transcript of the bizarre words used by the two callers: technos, organics, and the vague threat known as the breach. These seem to refer to some kind of animal species, judging by the use of the word herds, but it was hard to make heads or tails of it. My search in the regular web turned up nothing, until I stumbled across this site and found 4 posts, 3 of them belonging to a girl named Madison Cromwell, and 1 belonging to a sheriff's deputy, Sean Hammond. From what I can gather in reading their accounts, both claim to have seen creatures of gargantuan and supernatural proportions. If there is any truth to them, then it might be reasonable to infer that the creatures Miss Cromwell encountered, called the Oak Walker in the transcript by the mysterious Mr. Caronte, was likely inorganic due to its plant-like characteristics. This creature seemed to be highly intelligent and even possibly telekinetic, with the ability to create and control smaller human-sized creatures referred to by Cromwell as puppets. It is also important to note that in both Hammond's account and in the secret phone call, the creature known as the Big One or the Oathwalker is described as a type of apex predator whose downfall contributed largely to the explosion of anomaly activity outside of the regular area. It is entirely possible that Miss Cromwell did in fact succeed in killing the creature, which in turn allowed lesser species to thrive in its absence and spill out into the environment. In the second account, the strange metallic monstrosity that attacked Officer Hammond seems to fit rather well into the techno category given its electronic and mechanical attributes. This very well could be one of the echo spiders brought up by Sheriff Wernaugh. While there isn't much information to go by, it seems that organics and technos are merely subcategories of the various paranormal beings that came from the breach. And these anomalies present a clear and present danger to all human beings around them. A mention of electromagnetic readings powerful enough to be observed by satellites also seems to indicate that there is significant environmental disturbance going on in the area, which may have contributed to the origins of these species, or perhaps is a byproduct of their existence. This, of course, was troubling to say the least, but I wanted to know more. And for that, I'd have to find the people who had supposedly witnessed these occurrences firsthand. Armed with 2 complete names, I info hunted and found some alarming results. Madison Cromwell's family recently moved from Black Oak to an unknown location somewhere deep in the hills of Idaho. For a family of relatively low income to undertake such an abrupt move, they were either pursuing better income or desperately fleeing from some form of danger. I have no idea if Madison is alive or not. All of her social media accounts have been deleted, and none of her contacts on the various platforms seem to know if she quit, disappeared the last night of her job, or is still lying low somewhere. In the case of Sean Hammond, it was announced early yesterday morning that a gunfight broke out in the Barron County Sheriff's Office between members of the department, resulting in 3 dead and 4 injured. Sean Hammond is said to be still at large, charged with rather serious crimes of organizing domestic terrorism, though no more details have been provided on that. One of the casualties was Officer James Walker, the partner Hammond referenced in his account on this site. Walker was shot 12 times in the firefight and taken to the Black Oak Regional Hospital. According to the hospital reports, he died of his wounds on the operating table soon after. For such violence to break out between fellow peace officers and for such drastic charges to be leveled, there must be serious issues in the Barron County government, which lends more than a little credence to the validity of the whistleblower's claims. But it gets worse. Upon looking into the reference to Black Crow Island, I could only find a passing mention about an explosion that destroyed an abandoned sanatorium on a small island off the coast of British Columbia. Not much was provided in terms of detail, except that 2 people had been seen fleeing the island on a rowboat, but were never apprehended. How this is connected, I do not know, but if it was important enough to mention in the phone call, I can only assume it had ties to the same forces at work in Barron County. As for the vague LSAR group of which Mr. Caronte appears to be a major player in, I found nothing that matched the description of his lethal capabilities. No large-scale private security companies hail by that name, and while I have no doubt it's an acronym for something, I don't know what it could be. Whoever they are, I seriously doubt the fighters of LSAR are interested in the well-being of Barron County or the employees at the New Wilderness Wildlife Reserve. That leads me to this moment, as I finish typing the finishing touches on my entry. Normally, I would say to refer to my article in our media website for the rest of the story. But my editor was found dead just this morning with a bullet in his head, the back of his head. I have a well-adapted gut feeling when I've been asking too many questions, stirred around in too many pots. And I know they're coming for me. Random cars have been following me to and from home. Strangers keep watching my apartment building, and I found a tracking device stuck to the trunk of my car today. Maybe this little post will garner enough attention to alert the people of Barron County to their imminent danger. Perhaps the new wilderness night rangers will read this in time and find a way to avoid whatever horrible plans Sheriff Warna and Elsar have for them. Regardless, my part in this investigation is at an end. My wife and 2 boys are waiting for me at the predetermined spot I arranged over the burner phone I bought at a local phone kiosk. I have withdrawn all of my money and cash and have booked flights for 3 different countries, bus tickets for 4 different cities, and a rental car with 3 sets of fake license plates. My social media accounts are all deleted. My entire family has shed their personal phones, and I even dyed my hair. If someone reading this is hunting me, good luck. I've dug up people who didn't want to be found for half my life, and my family is at stake here. You'll never catch us. And if you're someone who lives in Barron County, or heck, anywhere near Ohio, all I can say is, brace for impact. Don't trust Elsar. If you take nothing else from my post, then spread those words everywhere. Share it, tweet it, paint it on the freaking walls. Someone has to do something. Someone has to stop them before they go too far. I know it sounds like some crazy conspiracy theory. I know most of you won't believe me, but I swear they're real. Real and dangerous. My name is Greg Burkitts. They already know who I am, so there's no point in the whole fake name thing, is there? Before it all went wrong, I used to work for a little construction company in Tennessee. My wife, Sasha, and I had an apartment. We were making ends meet, even if just barely, and were trying to have a kid. We both knew it would make our lives 10 times more hectic, but we didn't care. Some people might think that's stupid, but when you're with a person you love, your perspective changes. I wanted to be a dad in the worst way, and every time I saw Sarah paging through a pregnancy book or shopping for baby clothes online, it made us both giggle like excited school children. One day, our boss called the entire crew together and handed out pamphlets detailing an offer made by some oddball group called the Black Crow Foundation. With all the industrial accidents that had been happening all around the country lately, the foundation wanted to help keep America's waterways and air pollution-free, but they needed manpower, especially men who knew their way around power tools. For such help, the massive non-profit would pay each man $250,000 for 1 month of work at various chemical cleanup sites around the country, with all personal protective equipment provided for us. You heard that right. $250,000 post-tax for just 30 days of work. Our boss checked the group out thoroughly, called government registration offices, even met with their attorney, all to ensure it wasn't some elaborate scam. Even the army sent out a high-ranking officer to vouch for them. In the end, the boss man told us it was the biggest grin I'd ever seen him wear, that the BCF was real, and gave us the green light to sign up. Everyone did, including me. After all, for that much money, who wouldn't? Besides, Sarah and I were getting by, but as soon as she got pregnant, I knew I'd need a lot more money to keep my family warm and fed. Call me what you will, but I love my wife, and I wanted to give her everything. I would have even gone if they only offered $50,000. Sasha was naturally both thrilled and skeptical when I broke the news to her. For a price so steep, she reasoned there had to be a catch. But we both knew to throw such an opportunity aside on suspicion alone was ludicrous. We might never get this kind of chance again. So I bid her an emotional goodbye, packed my bags, and got on a bus provided by the foundation, bound for my pre-selected work site. Several days later, I found myself slogging through the forests of southern Ohio, tired and missing home, while the overcast sky wept curtains of continuous rain. My rubber boot slid on the mud, and I tripped. "Careful." 36 caught me under my right arm and kept me from falling on my face. "You don't want to rip your suit." "You mean no one wants to see me end up like 7? Raindrops pattered down on the yellow plastic hood over my head, each tom-tom of liquid rhythm a stark reminder of just what a torn suit could entail. 24, are you alright?" The sharp voice of R11 barked from the front of the column. His olive-colored rubber overalls matched the gloomy surroundings of the Appalachian foothills, and the skeletal trees dripped cold rain onto us both with indifference. I eyed the shiny black rifle in his gloved hands and straightened up. "I'm fine, I just slipped." R11 stepped closer to me, and his wary gaze searched my burden from behind his gas mask. "Equipment check." The rest of the column froze, all eyes on me, 36 and R11. The other guards shifted on their feet in uncomfortable stamps, stroked their rifles with nervous thumbs, and scanned the trees. My fellow workers in their yellow suits stood motionless, all waiting to see if I had made some dreaded mistake, one that would spell my immediate removal. Why do they all have to stare like that? Doing my best not to sigh in annoyance and embarrassment, I unshouldered my bulky pack and balanced it on one knee. "All in order, sir. Nothing's broken." R11 glared hard at me, and his narrowed eyes traveled the length of my suit with meticulous scrutiny. No one moved, and aside from the pattering rain, not a sound could be heard. A few yards away, R16, one of the other guards, flexed his grip on his rifle and took a step my way. "Please, God, I didn't do anything wrong. My suit isn't ripped. I feel fine. I didn't drop anything." "Clear." R11 let his shoulders slacken and took one hand off his rifle to give me an encouraging clap on the arm. "Hang in there and watch your step, alright? It's not much further." With that, 36 helped pull my pack over my shoulders again, and the column shuffled onward, grateful to be out from under the hawkish watch of the guards. I put my mind to breathing under my tight-fitted respirator and tried not to think about 7. With the dull gray sky above empty of any birds and no wind to speak of, the squelching of boots in the mud, muffled breathing under protective masks, and the creak of rucksack straps echoed like cannon shots. I couldn't smell anything other than the chlorine sting of my rubber mask. My dry throat cried out for water, but I knew we wouldn't be allowed to drink anything until we reached the site. 36 hefted his pack higher on his broad shoulders ahead of me, and I took a moment to study him. As with all the others, I didn't know his name, and he didn't know mine. All we had to go by were numbers given to us at random the first day we showed up. That had been by design, and as far as I knew, even the guards with their green suits, black guns, and the ominous R before their code numbers didn't know one another's names. None of the guys from my old job in Tennessee were at the site, and I had a feeling that this too was deliberate. Yet, of all the workers so far, 36 seemed to be the only one who wasn't spooked by the bizarre secrecy of the operation. He reminded me of my father, at least twice my age and a head taller, with silver hair and a warm smile that didn't reflect the suspicion the rest of the crew emanated. In fact, 36 seemed to be the one person in the entire operation who never drew any attention, no matter what he did. When he'd somehow found out about my birthday on the second day at base camp, 36 had miraculously produced an old-style Hershey bar as an impromptu gift. Even the straight-laced colonel had been too shocked at seeing me with retro candy to yell about it, though he'd doubled the guard around camp afterward. If they would just let someone go into town for better food, chocolate wouldn't be so rare. I mean, seriously, they're paying us a stupid amount just to be here. Does the colonel really think we'd run off? The only guy I know of without a number, and he's got an enormous stick shoved up his. "We're here." I almost ran into 36, and my heart did a nervous flip-flop, a halt at his words. The rest of the column filed into the edge of the clearing behind me, and one by one ground to a standstill, the squelch of boots dying to a solemn silence. Glad for the reprieve and curious, I shuffled aside to peer around 36 into the work site for the first time. Whoa. It sat nestled between a grove of pines like a great sleeping dragon of steel, with the prow jutting out over a defilade and the stern hunched against several limestone boulders. The massive propellers hung a good 15 feet above the ground, and the radio antennas rose high into the slate-gray sky above the dense trees in rigid lines. All around, the green pipes stood bent or broken from the weight of the thing coming down on them, and ripples in the bulky steel hull showed where the craft's algae-lined skin had slammed into the ground. I blinked hard and took a step forward, almost unable to believe my own eyes. Is that a battleship? Eyes on me. A cold, familiar voice cut through the tension, and the others broke their wide-eyed stares to find the colonel perched on the hood of a nearby army truck, dressed in his own olive-drab protective suit. From where I stood, I couldn't see the colonel's eyes behind his plastic gas mask visor, but the stern caution in his voice, the way he didn't completely turn to face us as if afraid to take his eyes off the warship, made ice run through my blood. This is the work site. You will work here from 0600 to 1800 hours every day. You will stay in your assigned work teams and report any new findings directly to the guard force. Under no circumstances are you to take anything from this area for personal use. Such actions will result in immediate removal. Am I understood? Seven's manic scream filtered through my memory, along with the echo of the gunshot that ended it. I nodded along with everyone else. Good. The colonel waved his gloved hand at the landlocked vessel, and I could have sworn I caught his voice tremble ever so slightly. Our guard forces have already swept both the ship and the surrounding area for security threats. Your job is to take radiological and magnetic readings, as well as gather all loose items inside the ship for collection. Scanning teams will move in first, then the evidence teams. All recovered items will be bagged and placed in secured containers before being loaded onto the trucks here. He pointed to the row of waiting diesel trucks, against whom leaned several more soldiers in green chemical suits, all carrying rifles. Any questions? You mean like how did a battleship end up in the middle of nowhere, Ohio? Still, I didn't raise my hand, and no one else did either. Something about this rubbed me wrong. The air tasted metallic to my mask, and a cold sensation rippled down my spine like water over the bones. It occurred to me that ever since arriving at the base camp a few miles away, I had yet to see a bird or any kind of animal in this general vicinity. The lack of noise had been unsettling then, but now it made my stomach churn. I risked a glance over my shoulder at the way we'd come. My gaze met R-16's, and he, along with the rest of the guard force, stared back from their line drawn across the trail, weapons at low ready. Sweat started to roll down my armpits, and I tried to breathe slow to calm my panic. They're just securing the perimeter, that's all. The colonel said we get to leave at 1800. They're just here for our protection. Relax. 36's muffled whisper startled me from my frantic thoughts. They don't want to shoot anyone. They're as nervous as you are. Gripping the straps of my pack, I swallowed a sour-tasting lump in my throat, glad he couldn't see my doubtful wins behind my respirator. If you say so. Ahead, the colonel checked his watch and threw another murky look toward the looming battleship. Right, if there aren't any questions, team leaders, take charge of your units and get to work. Like trained yellow automatons, 36, myself and the rest of the workers unshouldered our heavy packs and began to ready various pieces of equipment. Some had hammers, drills, handheld gas torches, and battery-powered saws. Others, like my team, had Geiger counters, electromagnetic detectors, and enough cameras to fit out a library in North Korea. Up until now, the exact details of our job had been kept secret by the higher-ups, who gave us vague replies whenever we asked. Even though it made more sense as the seconds ticked by, I didn't feel any better about it. I picked up some sort of handheld meter and noticed a few words stenciled on the side in faded, smeared black letters, as if someone had tried to scrub them off but failed. Property of the Environmental Liminal Space Alleviation and Reduction Program. My brow furrowed. LSAR? I thought we were working for the Black Crow Foundation. Perhaps this was some sort of hand-me-down piece of gear donated by someone else. 9 and I will take the readings. 24, you and 15 will record. My team leader 11 adjusted the black nylon strap on his side-slung Geiger counter and broke me from my train of thought. 36 said nothing, silent and content with his large flashlight. Our team was the only one with 5 members, and for some reason, 11 never remembered 36 in any of his checks or briefings. It always bothered me, but not enough to say anything, since 36 never seemed to mind. I wasn't that close with the team anyway, 36 being my only friend in camp. In fact, I'd seen the others so infrequently that in this moment, I couldn't recall what they looked like without their suits on. How are we getting in? 15 visibly shook, and his gloved hands almost dropped the camera he held twice. 11 jerked his head at another team that lugged a large roll of rope netting toward the ship. I figure we'll climb the side. No way we're cutting through all that armor, not without bigger cutting torches. To my left, 9 swiveled his hooded head to examine our tiny group. So we're just not gonna talk about the fact that there is a literal battleship in the middle of the woods? His voice rang out louder than he likely intended, and all but 36 froze. 11, 15 and I all glared at 9, our eyes darting toward the nearby guards. None looked our way, but still, my skin crawled. That was way too close. As if he thought the same thing, 9 let his shoulders slump in a sheepish, uncomfortable apology. Later, 11 hissed behind his respirator and rolled his deflated rucksack up in a tarp to keep the rain from soaking it further. The rest of us followed suit, and with our gear shouldered, we headed for the beached steel warship. In a broad line, our team moved along with the other scanners and swept the ground with our detection equipment for any signs of abnormality. I carried a small notepad on a clipboard, a camera mounted on my left shoulder, and a special nylon harness. 15 recorded 9's electromagnetic readings, and I took down the radiation levels from 11. 36 walked along beside me with his oversized flashlight and said nothing. 0.6, 0.3, 0.5. 11 droned on, his voice almost as automated as the clicking counter in his gloved hands. Nominal, nominal, nominal. I scratched the numbers down with my pen and tried not to look up at the ship that loomed ever closer. Per our brief instruction on the equipment, radiation levels were normal for the most part. 9 couldn't find anything remotely strange about the electromagnetic fields in the area. Yet, in my mind's eye, I could see 7's contorted face, hear his inane screams, and I shivered. All around, the scattered branches from the trees that the ship had crushed poked into the sky like skeletal fingers, as if silently trying to warn us away. An icy sensation ran down my back, and I imagined them reaching for me, their silent screams a strange static that rang in my head. It escalated into a roar so that my ears itched, and the breath stuck inside my windpipe like it had been glued there. For a split second, the noise crashed in waves against the inside of my skull, along with a low monotone beeping, almost like a rhythm or a pattern. Something grabbed my shoulder, and I almost jumped out of my skin in fright. 36 met my frightened gaze and pointed with his flashlight ahead of me. "Stay focused. You have to climb now." The massive iron ship squatted not yards away, its thick rivets coated in fresh surface rust, pine needles stuck to its smooth sides, the red paint from beneath the waterline chipped and peeling. All the scanning teams stood in line at the side of the ship and gaped up at it. Though with their masks on, I couldn't see their slack jaws. In somber reflex, the first team busily prepared 2 pneumatic launchers to fire grappling hooks over the tall gunwales. One of the other scanners, 3, slogged through the muck to 11. We're taking the bridge, and teams 2 and 3 are on the upper decks. I need you guys to go with teams 5 and 6 to the lower levels and sweep them out, okay? 11 threw a sideways glance at the battleship, and then back at the line of green-clad soldiers far to our rear. They checked it, right? 3's eyes held the same cynical resignation behind his protective mask as 11's. They did, but I don't think we'd be wearing this garbage if it was completely safe. So stay on your toes, alright? Radio me if anything goes wrong. Like that would help, 9 muttered, and I snorted in agreement beneath my own mask. Chunk, chunk. Both pneumatic grapples shot into the air and landed with resounding clangs on the deck of the old warship. As soon as their metal hooks snagged the ship's railing, the advance team unfurled a long brown cargo net and hauled it up the slippery steel by the ropes. It reminded me of the old photographs I'd seen in my school days, black and white visages of men clambering over the sides of these mighty iron titans, loaded with weapons and gear to charge into the unknown surf of war. How strange was it that we, similarly loaded with gear and apprehension, now strove to surmount those same nets and rails to discern why this vessel existed here at all. "Alright, let's move," 3 called from the foot of the cargo net, doing his best to shout in a full-face respirator. "Hands on the verticals, feet on the horizontals, 3 points of contact at all times, and for God's sakes, don't look down." My heart leapt into my throat, but I swallowed hard and sloshed through the rain after the others toward the net. I'd never been very good at climbing in gym class, and the rope would be soaked with the incessant rain by the time my turn came. A fall from that height would mean broken bones at minimum, and who knew what contaminants lay undiscovered on the ground. All it took for 7 was falling asleep with his headphones on 4 miles away. We don't even know what we're dealing with, do we? No one does. The promised $250,000 payment for this job struck me as pitiful now that I stood at the threshold of whatever monstrosity the authorities had stumbled upon in this desolate stretch of Ohio's wilderness. I thought of Sasha and our jubilant plans for when I returned home. I'd been so proud to be able to provide that much for us after 2 years of scraping by paycheck to paycheck. If she only knew where I stood now, I doubted my darling wife would even want the money anymore. 11 and 15 scaled the net, followed by 9 and myself. 36 climbed right next to me, as calm and cool as if this were an everyday occurrence for him. I shook like a leaf, my heart rammed itself against my chest, and the muddy soles of my rubber overboots slid on the net with cruel ease. "Almost there," 36 grunted from his place on the netting. "You're doing fine." I wanted to sound carefree, but my hands trembled so hard that I felt like I stood on a giant oily washing machine. My palm missed the next handhold, and everything went in slow motion. Around me, the entire world jerked downwards, and my extended right boot missed its mark thanks to my backward tumble. In a panic, I squeezed my eyes shut, my lungs closing in terror. A quick, strong weight crushed the air from my chest, and I stopped so hard my teeth clacked together. "Dude, you okay?" I opened my eyes to find 15 and 36 each had a hand on my nylon camera harness, their quick thinking the only thing between me and a 60-foot fall. Scrambling for the net, I didn't breathe until I had all 4 limbs safely back on the thick webbing. Yeah, thanks guys." 15 cocked his head to one side, his voice confused. Okay, good thing you're lighter than you look." 36 chuckled and waited for me to crawl up beside him again. "Come on, it'll be drier inside. I don't care if it's soaked. As long as I can fall, I'll take it." Once my legs swung over the steel rail of the ship and my feet hit the deck, I let out a long sigh of relief. There he is. 9 slaps me on the back, his tone warm and teasing. Almost lost you. Good thing 15 is dummy strong. Or just strong. 15 shook his head at 9, but I could tell the praise pleased him. Seriously though, 24? Don't do that again. Sure thing. I gave him a thumbs up, though my knees knocked beneath my suit. 11 waved us over, his Geiger counter in hand, and his green eyes betrayed a concern that made me forget about my near-death tumble. 9, get your scanner out. 9 unbuckled his bulky electromagnetic scanner from its place on his harness and pointed it over the ship. For the first time in the brief period we'd worked together, 9 seemed speechless. So you're seeing it too. 11 kept his voice low, and all around the deck I noticed the other teams clotted together, talking in hushed, concerned whispers. There's no way the rain did this. These are waterproof. It has to be the ship. What is it? 15 stuck his head over 11's shoulder, too curious to be afraid. 11 held up his device, and my guts soured. 9's electromagnetic scanner was having what amounted to a mechanical seizure, where in 1 second, it flew off the charts in high readings, and the next, it dropped down to nothing at all. 11's Geiger counter, on the other hand, showed radioactive detection, but not in a consistent pattern. It didn't spike randomly like 9's readings, but pulsed in a rhythmic, almost synchronized beat, like an irradiated heart monitor. 15 and I stood frozen, too stunned to record the rapid-fire measurements. 11 tapped the side of his counter with frustrated knuckles, but couldn't get it to stabilize. I'll let 3 know, and he'll radio back to the colonel. Maybe he'll pull us out. Sit tight, guys. The instant 11 walked away, 9 turned to us and cast a few furtive looks toward the deck. Something isn't right. I was told this would be a chemical cleanup job, not some naval version of Chernobyl. And how on earth did they get this thing way out here anyway? They couldn't have. 15 crossed both arms in his typical discomfort at anything that resembled a threat to normalcy. It has to have been an accident. Maybe there was a flood or something. 9 set both hands on his hips in indignation. A flood? Look around, man. We're miles from the nearest major river and at least 2 states away from the ocean. It didn't float here. Besides, did you see how those guards acted? They don't even want to get close to this thing. I leaned back over the railing, and from my high place atop this strange vessel, the line of soldiers in the distant tree line looked like little olive drab ants. Maybe they don't know either. After all, if they knew, why hire us? Why pay money for something they could do themselves? So where did this hunk of junk come from then? 9's question remained unanswered as 11 strode back into our circle, his fists balled. He beckoned the 4 of us closer and spat between angry gritted teeth. 3 wants to pull out, but the colonel said no. I guess radiation isn't at lethal levels, so he wants us to finish our scans and help the evidence teams start cleanup. So here's what we're gonna do. We go down and get our scans done quick as possible. Once we're finished, we radio 3 and hit for the ground again, where it's safe. If the colonel wants, he can come help us shovel radioactive bolts for all I care. But I'm not getting cancer 40 years too soon while he sits on his tail in a nice dry tent. Got it? I nodded along with the others, both emboldened and unsettled at 11's defiance. I didn't want to risk sterility via irradiation, but I still remembered how the colonel had dispatched 7 without so much as blinking an eye. Suppose he ordered us back on the boat at gunpoint? None of us had any guns, and even if we did, there were far more soldiers than workers. Sasha and I couldn't have children if I got shot. 3 led his team to the bridge, and I trailed behind 7, awed at the sheer size of this ship. It seemed to be a huge island of metal, and I racked my brain to try and remember how long my grandfather's minesweeper had been during his service in the Korean War. It's an Iowa class. 36 strode behind me as we went down a long set of iron stairs into the lower decks of the ship. One of the biggest battleships America ever built. They say the guns were so powerful that a full broadside with all 4 turrets would crater the surface of the ocean and expose the hull right down to the keel. I clicked on the headlamp built into my hood and swept its bright beam over the bulkheads of the vessel. Wow, I wonder what this one was called. Seraphim. 9 waved back from the dark corridor at the foot of the stairs and tapped his gloved hand on a circular life preserver on the wall. USS Seraphim. My brow furrowed and I clanked down the rest of the metal stairs in silence. History had been a side hobby of mine for years, but I'd never heard of the USS Seraphim, not in any books or documentaries. Granted, I was no professor, but with such a big ship, I figured I would have heard of it somewhere, especially from Grandpa. He knew tons of ships, and this thing should have been around for the Korean War. Weird. Down 2 flights of narrow steps we went, through oval-shaped metal bulkhead doors and claustrophobic, shadowy corridors. In the dark interior of the battleship, our headlamps illuminated clean hallways, fresh paint on the steel, and even scuff marks on the floor from shoe polish rubbed off boots. Blue tin cups sat on desks, still brimming with coffee that had gone cold, and paper manuals lay open at antiquated control posts. It seemed as if the sailors of the USS Seraphim had left the ship only days ago, everything frozen in time. Did the soldiers clear out the bodies? 9's voice echoed in the dark expanse of a third deck passageway, his scanner still spasming. 11's Geiger counter thumping away at every step. Or am I somehow missing the corpses of thousands of sailors? 11 too acted uninterested in his counter now that we're deep inside the ship, and peered into the various small compartments we passed by with caution, only to find abandoned workstations, empty bunks, and ancient equipment of war. I doubt it. They're having us do all the heavy lifting. Besides, you see any blood? There's not even a scrap of loose clothing. Maybe it's a trick? 15 glanced behind us, and his dark eyes dotted back and forth in paranoia. They could be testing some kind of secret weapon on us or something. My cousin lives an hour away from here. He's been hearing some crazy stuff coming from Barron County. Maybe the government is pretending to be a non-profit for some kind of experiment? Or 9 poked his head into a room and searched the abandoned space with his light. Someone else put this thing here to draw us in, like a mousetrap with cheese. Who? Aliens? 15 tried to sound incredulous, but his gloved hands shook with their clipboard and pen, his headlamp wavering as well. 9 shrugged and kicked at a stray pebble from 11's muddy boots. I don't know, you remember 7's meltdown? He was screaming about a long dark road falling from the sky, and voices. I'm telling you, this thing didn't get here on its own. It was put here on purpose. It doesn't matter how it got here. 11 checked his Geiger counter, but from the way his shoulders hitched in anxiety, I wondered if he didn't secretly agree with one of their theories, or both. The sooner we get this over with, the sooner we can leave, as long as no one gets hurt. I don't care if the aliens and the government have a top secret orgy in this irradiated rust bucket. With that, 11 moved off down the central corridor, followed by 9 and an uneasy 15. Chafing at being left in the rear yet again, I picked up my boot to step through the next bulkhead after them. I whirled around and stared off into another dark corridor on my left. My nerves tingled, and I realized that it wasn't from 11's counter, nor 9's scanner. None of us had cell phones, thanks to the colonel confiscating them after 7's demise. Nothing we had on us could have made that sound. Garbled radio static, followed by more monotone beeps echoed faintly from somewhere deep inside the darkness and sent chills running down my spine. The ship's lights and powers weren't on, and without the massive oil-fired engines producing current, nothing mechanical in this iron behemoth should have worked. Am I hearing things? Should I say something? What if the others think I'm going crazy, like Seven? It's close by. 36 walked up beside me, and the beam of his extra-large flashlight probed the blackness of the unexplored hallway like a white laser. Come on. I opened my mouth to protest, but stopped myself. 36 had never steered me wrong and saved my life at least once today. Besides, we were supposed to report any strange activity to 3, and this counted as strange in my book. Maybe if I was the first one to report something unusual, the colonel would give me a bonus, or at least a phone call home to Sasha. With how close it sounds, we can check it out and catch up with the others before they even notice we're gone. Taking a deep breath, I cast one last cautious glance at the others and pursued 36 down the side hall. If all goes well, this will be the last time you'll hear from me. I've been preparing for days now, planning routes with Sasha, stealing a few license plates from a local scrapyard, and pulling as much cash as I can without arousing suspicion. It's a shame really. Most of the $250,000 in my bank account will stay there untouched, since there's no way I can take it all and not alert Elsar. They've been tailing me ever since I left the work site, and I know they're monitoring my bank account, but I can siphon out enough to get us far from our apartment to a new life, a new home, and a fresh start. Sasha is out cold, curled up under her favorite fuzzy blanket in bed, and I don't want to wake her until I have to. I've been slowly moving our sleep schedule 1 hour at a time over the past few days, so by the time I'm ready to put my plan into motion, it'll happen when the people watching us least suspect it. So for now, I sit here at my desk, typing this out with the shades drawn and the door locked. Once this is over, it's time for a few hours of shut-eye. Then drive, nap, eat, and repeat. Until then, I'll pour as much as I can remember into this dusty old laptop, with the hopes that someone out there can use this information for good. After leaving the others, I followed 36 further and further into the dark interior of the ship. More long, tight passages snaked between thick steel bulkheads, some with painted warning signs, others with cheery navy posters, or even the occasional pin-up girl. Something about the way they watched us from the old paper unnerved me. The smiles strained, the irises dark and unfeeling. Silence permeated the air, only broken by our footsteps and the footsteps of the other teams echoing through the metal hull from all over the ship. Every breath I took became an abomination, some horrible misdeed that would surely bring judgment raining down on my head like the massive shells from the battleship's main guns. Relax, you're just on edge because of that garbage 9 was saying. Talk to 36. That always calms you down. So, I cleared my throat and squinted into the dark with nervous caution. You think it was aliens? 36 laughed, a booming fatherly chuckle that rang down the empty halls of the Seraphim. No, 9 and 15 have colorful imaginations, but I'm afraid they're both mistaken. Reassured and curious by the confident way he spoke, I fell into step with 36 and began to ignore the murky doorways we passed on either side. So what's your theory? He paused at an intersection and met my inquisitive eyes with his gray ones. Have you ever heard of the term equilibrium? I frowned behind my gas mask. Isn't that like balance? Exactly that. 36 went right, down a corridor lined with big pipes that ran horizontal to the floor. Balance in all things. Take a ship, for example. It needs balance so it doesn't roll over on the water. So you add weights to make it sit lower in the water, but not so much that it actually sinks. Your objective is to float, but in order to float, you sometimes have to sink. Stepping over another bulkhead threshold, I blinked at a burst of lightheadedness and trailed after him. But how does that get a ship into the woods? My perception of sound started to fade, and I noticed that my headlamp had grown dimmer, though 36's flashlight had not. A familiar static crept up in my brain again, and I almost didn't catch 36 making a left turn at a set of downward stairs. If an apple falls from a tree, does it go up or down? Down? I grimaced at a slight hum in my ears, but could only shake my head at it in irritation since the suit hood blocked my fingers from checking my ear canals. Indeed. 36 descended further into the bowels of the ship, my light flickering to a pitiful gasp, while his stayed bright as a shooting star. Nature seeks balance, and when things are out of balance, it restores them in the only way it knows how. But what happens if the curtain of reality, the fabric that holds together what you know of as real, tears? Things slip through, fall out of this reality and into another. An imbalance is created, and so nature must do what it does best: restore balance. Hushed static turned to thunderous waves in my skull that demanded to be released, and my ears itched so bad that my head hurt. Still, I stumbled along after 36, my headlamp going out, with only his soft voice and blinding white flashlight to guide me. 36 ran an affectionate hand over the walls, as though exploring an old family home. The crew of this vessel didn't intend for this to happen any more than the soldiers outside intended for them to crash land it here. But something equally massive must have fallen out of this world in order for a ship this size to fall into it. However, it seems the crew stumbled through a different rift than the Seraphim, and for that, their world lies in peril. At the hall's end, he ducked into a large steel door the size of a pickup truck, and my eardrums rippled with roars of undulating static. My mind reeled, bombarded by eerie screams of strange, warbled fuzz, and eyes clogged my veins in a belated form of confusion. Yet, in the midst of my mental fog, something pierced the chaotic storm like a beacon in the night. The sounds. I hear the sounds again. I leaned against the bulkhead for support. My legs fell asleep, and a numbness inched up my body with slow but malicious progress. It took every ounce of strength I had to lift my feet, which seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, and drag myself into the room behind 36. Cold air drained my body of heat, and every joint locked up with stiffness. My vision blurred, and I saw Sasha's warm smile. Her dancing blue eyes tasted her sweet lips on mine. I'm so tired, Sasha. So cold. I'll just rest for a bit. Not yet, Greg. 36 caught my arm and kept me from falling on my face, his words soothing and kind. Not today. You have work to do. Look. At his command, my headlamp flared to life. The static died in my head, and I sucked in a gasp of air through my mask. In front of me, an array of complicated switchboards, dials, and controls waited, all the bulbs lit up like a Christmas tree. Newspaper clippings hung from a large corkboard bolted to the cramped walls of the compartment, along with a few black and white photographs of smiling, voluptuous pin-up girls. A clock built by little round dials into the console read 13:02. At the forefront of the array stood a single black metal chair, and on the desk, a set of antique black headphones. Paralyzed by the silence of my brain clearing, I gaped at the room in awe. I recoiled from the headset in surprise. A radio. My whole body shook in perplexed fear, but a strange curiosity overrode my sense of flight. A working radio? How is this possible? 36 picked up the headset, its long black rubber cable plugged into the control panel, and held it out to me. Nature needs balance, Greg. 7 ran from it, and thus lost himself in it. You have a choice. Restore balance, or plunge into the storm. Like a jackhammer, my heart thudded inside my chest, and I stared at the headset in his hand. With an ominous click, the little dial clock on the panel rolled over to 13:04. Deep inside my mind, like a flame lit in the dark, something shifted. Close the rift. As soft as a butterfly's wing beat, the whisper called to me. Not a man or a woman, but a cool metallic voice, emotionless and yet unthreatening. It calmed my raging flood of anxiety, the ice left my veins, and the compartment seemed a little less foreign in that moment. This someone didn't mean me any harm. No, not someone, I realized. It was the voice of something. Something enormous, cold and made of steel. I hear you. Muscles operating on autopilot, I sat down at the desk, unzipped my protective hood, and focused all energy on my thoughts. I want to help. Without my bulky hood, the air felt cool and fresh and dried the sweat on my neck in seconds. My name is Greg. The pulse in my temple slowed from its panicked race, and with a smile, I placed the headphones over my ears. What are your orders, Seraphim? 24. I opened my eyes and stared into the bright glare of no less than 7 LED headlamps. 11, 9, 15, 3, and 2 soldiers stared at me from the narrow doorway of the compartment, eyes wide with shock behind their mask visors. It took me a moment to realize how dark the compartment had become, the panel no longer alive with current, the bulbs and dials out. Around my ears, the black rubber headset barked forth no static, no more beeps, and the whisper in my head had vanished along with 36. Hey, I croaked, confused and petrified, eyeing the leveled rifle barrels of the guards. I was just... Who are you talking to? From behind the soldiers, the colonel pushed into the room, and the others shrank back at his presence. 7's anguished face flashed through my memories again, and I snapped my mouth shut, unable to formulate words. He and I locked eyes, and the colonel flexed his right hand's grip on the service pistol he carried. I asked you a question, 24. Who were you trying to contact? I don't know. I wasn't trying to radio anyone. Please, don't shoot me. Please, I don't want to die. Instead of bleeding for mercy, I glanced back at the desk, clothed in shadow before me, and spotted an open logbook at my right elbow. I came here with 36. He and I went to investigate a sound we heard. Following my gaze, the colonel saw the book, and his eyes narrowed to suspicious slits. With the careful movements of a cat stalking a mouse, he edged around me and picked up the logbook. What little portion of his face I could see took a stunned expression. Is this your handwriting? The colonel pushed the logbook at my face, and among a long series of entries, my own pencil marks lay on the paper, dashes and dots in thick, bunched patterns. What the? When did I write that? I just sat down. I didn't even say anything over the radio. My face heated up, and I squirmed in my chair, too afraid and confused to think clearly. I don't even know what that is. It's Morse code. The colonel withdrew the book again to himself and studied it, using the barrel of the pistol as a pointer on the pages. R16, look around for a code book. There should be a manual around here somewhere. R16 lowered his weapon with a reluctant sigh, but snatched up a small blue book from the far side of the console after a few moments of searching. "Here, sir." Tense silence followed while the colonel worked with the logbook and pencil alongside 3 far to my right. R16 and R12 blocked the door behind me, their rifles still trained on my chest. 11, 9, and 15 huddled to the left side of the compartment, watching me with half-terrified stares. It made me feel like a caged animal, and I only wished to pull my protective hood back up, run to the rainy outside world, and back home to Sasha's waiting arms. The pencil tumbled from the colonel's gloved hand. He looked down at me in the little metal chair, and for the first time, I caught a gleam of disbelief in his eyes. "Who did you say you were with?" 36. I coughed, my throat dry as a bone all at once. "One of the other workers in my team." At this, 3, 11, 9, and 15 all shook their heads in unison. 24, there is no 36. 3 moved to rub his forehead, but couldn't thanks to his suit and had to cross his arms instead. "You are part of a team of 4, just like everyone else. We only have 32 workers on our force, not 36. Stunned, I almost fell out of my seat. "But he saved my life on the nets. I fell and 36 helped catch me. 15, tell them you were there." 15 took an instinctive step back at the entire room now looking at him and dropped his gaze from mine to the floor. "Dude, I got you. I was surprised I could do it too with only one hand. There wasn't anyone else." Like a thunderclap, it hit me. On the latter, 15 had seemed confused at me thanking both him and 36, because to him, we were alone. The colonel hadn't been upset about the strange retro candy bar 36 had given me for my birthday. He'd just been stunned to see candy from the 1940s looking brand new. I was the only one who had ever spoken to 36 or included him in our team. 11 never assigned him jobs. 9 never joked with him. 15 never asked him questions. Only me. Because 36 hadn't been there. But before I could panic at the sheer insanity of that realization, my eyes caught a small blur of black letters stenciled on one of the Geiger counters held by the guards. Property of the Environmental Liminal Space Alleviation and Reduction Program. Just like the wording I had seen on the dosimeter on my first day. The more I looked, the more I saw it, printed on an obscure label on the small rucksacks all of us workers had been given, stamped onto the receivers of the rifles in the guards' hands, and etched into the handheld radio that was hooked to the colonel's belt. These weren't hand-me-downs. This was company property. We were company property. And it occurred to me that in the entire time I'd worked there, I'd never once seen an emblem or label of the Black Crow Foundation, only for LSAR, because, just like 36, the Black Crow Foundation wasn't real either. They're not going to let me leave now. I'll be shot, or worse. I'll never see Sasha again. Tears welled up in my eyes and I fought them in desperate panic. "Please, I'm fine, really. I'm not dangerous. Really, I'm not. I'm not like 7. I don't hear voices or anything. Please, Colonel, sir, you don't even have to pay me for today. I'll just go." "Today?" The colonel leaned down to meet my eye level, his harsh tone softened by shock. 24, you've been missing for 3 days. "What?" I pleaded, and my outstretched hands trembled with despair. "That's not possible. It hasn't even been an hour. Calm down." He placed the logbook in my lap, and the colonel patted me on the shoulder with an almost sympathetic touch. "Just stay calm, and no one will shoot you, alright? I need you to do something for me. Just this one thing, and you can go home. I promise. Read this." "Really?" Hope and relief welled in my chest. I snatched up the logbook and sniffled back tears behind my gas mask. Home. I would be home by the end of the week with Sasha, and I could put all this behind me. This entire idea had been one big lousy mistake, one I swore to myself I would never repeat. But my eyes found the words on the translated page, and I fought to breathe. 12:19, incoming. BB-136, come in. BB-136, this is CV-24. We have lost visual of you in the northern quadrant of the AO. Repeat, we have lost visual of you. Please confirm location. Over. 12:25, incoming. BB-136, this is CV-24, 7th Fleet. What is your location? 12:37, incoming. BB-136, USS Seraphim, are you reading us? Over. 12:42, incoming. BB-136, please confirm your location and status. 12:46, incoming. BB-136, be aware that multiple Soviet submarines have been reported in your vicinity. Are you under attack? Over. 1300, incoming. BB-136, this is Admiral Halsey, 7th Fleet Command on the USS Windham Bay. If you do not report within the next 10 minutes, I will assume you have been attacked by the enemy and will engage all Soviet craft within the area of operations with our full arsenal, including our atomic systems. For the last time, USS Seraphim, please respond. My gaze traveled to the newspaper clippings on the wall, and a horrific dread filled my guts. Each of the headlines came from post-World War II dates, but the events were all wrong. Truman vows to retake Poland from Soviets as atomic race intensifies. Stalin sends warships around Midway to thwart rumored US nuclear-capable warships. Red Army tanks square off with Allied soldiers in deadly showdown outside Berlin. 7th Fleet sent to force Russian submarines from Pacific shipping lanes. The others watched my reaction with startled wonder. But for me, the truth rang like the long screaming descent of a bomb. It never ended. I whispered to myself behind the black rubber fortress of my mask. Not for them. They just kept fighting. Until I forced myself to look down at the last message of the logbook and fought the urge to throw the little tablet. Unlike the other entries, this line of Morse code had been written in my handwriting. 1304, outgoing. Mayday, Mayday, 7th Fleet. This is BB-136, USS Seraphim. Do not launch your attack. I repeat, do not launch your attack. We are not engaged by the Soviets. Our vessel has been caught in a maelstrom at approximately 165 degrees east and 30 degrees north. Electrical activity from the storm seems to be causing our radio to malfunction, and our lookouts report unusual waves of dangerous proportions. We are unable to veer out of the path of the storm at this time and will try to ride it out. After it passes, we will rendezvous with you at Midway. This is BB-136, USS Seraphim, signing off. I didn't even feel the logbook slide through my fingers on its way to the cold steel floor. Instead, I looked back at the little dial clock on the control panel and choked back a sob. The clock had stopped on 1304.
Behind every normal family is a secret that could destroy it. Tonight, we unearth the dark truths buried behind closed doors. Let's dive in.
I married a man who washed his hands, like he was trying to erase a stain no one else could see. Water had always calmed me. The sink in our kitchen faced a narrow window, and on mornings when the rain slid down the glass in soft vertical lines, I would stand there with my coffee, and pretend the world was rinsing itself clean. Caleb Wright liked those mornings too, he said. Rain made him feel sober in a way sunlight never could. He said it quietly, like a confession he didn't want absolved. I noticed the hands first, not the way they touched me. Those were careful, reverent even, but the way he washed them. He scrubbed past the knuckles, under the nails, wrists raw and pink. He'd dry them with paper towels instead of cloth, as if fabric might remember. When I teased him about it, he smiled and said, "Old habits, 12 years sober." He liked to say 12 years was a cathedral number. You could build a life under it and call it holy. I met Caleb at church, of course. He sat 2 pews behind me the first Sunday, sang without raising his voice, and bowed his head with a concentration that felt private. Afterward, he waited while people drifted away, then asked if I wanted coffee. He didn't touch the sugar packets. He watched me stir mine and smiled like it was a small miracle. We were engaged within a year. The ring felt heavier than it looked, a simple band that caught the light and made my finger look newly invented. My friends said I'd found a good man. My mother said he had kind eyes. The pastor said redemption was visible on him, like a sheen you only saw if you knew how to look. Sometimes in photographs, there was something else, a blur in the background, a shape like a shadow thrown by an object, not in the frame. I blamed the phone camera. I blamed my nerves. Caleb ran a logistics firm downtown, steel and glass, the kind of place where water fell in engineered sheets down the lobby wall. When I visited him at work, I'd sit in the atrium and watch the cascade, the way the water broke into white noise and hid conversations. He'd come down with a smile that was practiced but sincere, and he'd hold my elbow instead of my hand. "Slippery," he'd say, always careful. At night, he slept lightly. He'd wake before dawn, breathing like he'd been running. Once I reached for him and felt his body stiffen, a plank under my palm. "Sorry," he whispered, already sitting up. "Dream, I didn't press. Love can be a discipline. You learn what not to touch." The first time I saw the car, it was in a reflection. We were at a charity gala, one of those rooms where the wine glasses chime against each other, like wind chimes in a storm. I was standing near a mirrored column, watching Caleb talk to a donor, when the glass behind him went dark. Not shadow dark, road dark. A stretch of black asphalt cut by yellow lines. For a second, headlights bloomed, white and blinding, and then I blinked. The reflection was normal again. My face flushed, Caleb laughing at something, the donor's hand on his arm. "You okay?" Caleb asked later when we were in the car. Rain tapped the windshield, a polite, persistent knocking. "Just tired," I said. He nodded. His hands were tight on the wheel. The wipers beat a steady time. He didn't turn on the radio. When I started planning the wedding, water threaded itself through everything. The venue had a fountain. The florist suggested calla lilies that liked damp soil. I dreamed of rain the night before, not as a disaster, but as a baptism. In the dreams, I was always dry. Caleb volunteered at recovery meetings on Thursdays. He came home smelling like old coffee and antiseptic, a scent that clung to him until he showered. He would stand under the water longer than necessary, eyes closed, lips moving without sound. Sometimes, I pressed my ear to the bathroom door and listened to the rush, the way it filled the apartment and erased edges. Once, after he'd been in there nearly an hour, I knocked. The water shut off abruptly. Silence. "I'm fine," he called. His voice was hoarse. When he came out, his skin was mottled, goose of flesh raised. He kissed my forehead and tasted like nothing at all. "Do you ever think about before?" I asked him that night, my head on his chest, listening to his heart slow. "Every day," he said, without hesitation. "That's how I stay sober." I waited for more. He didn't offer it. The shadow followed us into joy at our engagement party. As people clinked glasses and made jokes about speeches and seating charts, I saw it again, a faint silhouette at the edge of the room, shaped like a crumpled car. It hovered near the wall, where the paint met the floor. When I looked directly at it, it thinned, like smoke caught in a draft. When I looked away, it gathered. I started to catalog my senses, as if I were inventorying a crime scene. The smell of citrus cleaner at church, the grit of sugar on my tongue, the sound of tires on wet pavement outside our bedroom window at night, my own pulse loud in my ears. "Nat," Caleb said, using the nickname he knew I loved. "You're miles away." "Just thinking," I said. "About." I could have said anything. Centerpieces, guest lists. The way the world felt thinner lately, like paper soaked too long. "Us," I said. He smiled, relief loosening his shoulders. He reached for my hand, then hesitated, wiped his palm on his slacks, and took it. The first crack in the story came from a woman with a soft voice and sharp eyes. Her name was Marisol, and she ran the church's food pantry. We were stacking cans one Saturday when she asked how I'd met Caleb. "At church," I said. She nodded. "He's been here a long time, 12 years, I said. Proud, like it was my number, too. Her hands paused. "That's right," she said, after a beat. 12. There was something in the way she said it, like a door closing quietly. That night, I searched his name online. I told myself it was normal. Due diligence. There were articles about his company, photos of him cutting ribbons and shaking hands. Then, on the second page, a PDF from a local paper's archive. The headline was old-fashioned, the font blocky. "Head-on collision claims 2 lives." I didn't click it. Not yet. My chest felt full of water, pressure building. Caleb came home with groceries. He kissed me, set the bags down, went to wash his hands. I watched him from the couch, the way his shoulders rose and fell. The sink ran. The window over it showed the night, rain blurring the streetlights into halos. "Do you trust me?" he asked, without turning around. "Yes," I said. The word felt like a stone dropped into a well. The dream came back worse after that. Headlights. Closer. A woman's face at the wheel, mouth open in a soundless O. A baby seat in the back, a blanket folded wrong. The impact was always just before waking, my body jolting, like I'd been pushed. I clicked the PDF the next morning, while Caleb was at work. The names were there. Dates. A mugshot of a younger man who looked like Caleb if you stripped away 12 years of careful living. The article said alcohol was involved. It said prison. It said 6 years. It said Elena Rodriguez, 22, and her infant daughter. I closed the laptop and went to the sink. I washed my hands until they hurt. When Caleb came home, I didn't tell him I knew. Not yet. Knowledge is a weight. You learn how to carry it before you show it. We went to see the venue that weekend. It was by a river, the water moving fast and brown from rain. The coordinator talked about ceremony flow and cocktail hour. I watched Caleb's reflection in the glass doors. Behind him, for just a second, the river turned to road. "Are you sure?" I asked him as we stood by the water. "About everything." He looked at me, really looked, like he was measuring the distance between us. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. I wanted to scream. I wanted him to say it himself. Confession is a bridge. You don't know if it will hold until someone steps onto it. The shadow grew bolder after that. It slid into photographs, into mirrors, into the space behind Caleb when he laughed. It never touched him. It hovered, patient. At night, I started hearing water where there was none, a drip that wasn't the faucet, a rush like a distant shower. I'd get up and check, my bare feet cold on the tile. Everything would be dry. I went back to the article. I read about Elena Rodriguez. I found her obituary, a smiling photo, hair pulled back, a baby on her hip. She liked the beach. She worked at a bakery. There were comments from family, from strangers gone too soon. Prayers. I imagined her hands, flour, dusted. Her steering wheel, warm from the sun. The rain that night, slicking the road. "Nat," Caleb said one evening, standing in the doorway of the bathroom while I brushed my teeth. "If there was something you needed to know, would you want me to tell you?" My mouth was full of foam. I spit, rinsed. The water ran clear. "Yes," I said. He nodded once. He didn't speak. The week before the wedding, the rain came down in sheets. The river swelled. The news showed footage of flooded streets. Cars stalled, headlights like eyes above the waterline. I dreamed I was in the passenger seat. I dreamed my hands were not on the wheel. The night before the rehearsal, I found him in the kitchen at 3 a.m., hands in the sink, water blasting. His shoulders shook. "Caleb," I said. He turned, water dripping from his wrists to the floor. His face was wrecked, the careful lines undone. "I can't," he said. "I can't do this." I waited. The apartment hummed around us. The fridge kicked on. Somewhere outside, Tires hissed on wet asphalt. "I killed them," he said. The words fell heavy, undeniable. "I was drunk. I crossed the line. I killed a woman and her baby." I thought of Elena Rodriguez, of her hands, of water and road. "I went to prison," he said. "I got sober. I tried to be better. I tried to make it mean something. Why didn't you tell me?" My voice sounded far away. "I was afraid," he said, "that you'd see me and only see that night." I looked at him, really looked. The man I loved. The man who washed his hands raw. The shadow pooled at his feet, darker now, shaped unmistakably like wreckage. "I see you," I said, and didn't know which version I meant. We didn't sleep. Dawn came gray and wet. At the church, the fountain burbled, cheerful and wrong. Guests arrived with umbrellas, shaking water onto the floor. In the bathroom, in my dress, I stared at myself in the mirror. Behind me, faint but present, the road stretched on. Headlights bloomed. "Do you want to go through with this?" the pastor asked, gentle. I thought of forgiveness, of atonement, of the weight of an unconfessed sin now confessed. Heavy still. "Yes," I said, or maybe I said no. The water was loud. When the doors opened, I walked. Caleb waited at the front, eyes shining. As I reached him, the shadow stepped forward too between us. Solid at last. I smelled rain. I heard water. As we stood there, vows unspoken, I saw Elena Rodriguez in the reflection of the polished floor, her face calm, watching. The river outside surged somewhere. Tires hissed on wet pavement. Caleb reached for my hand. His palm was wet. I didn't pull away. I didn't lean in. The water kept running. The first thing I noticed was the heat too, much of it for a house that had been cold all day. Like the fire had learned how to breathe and was doing it just for me. The power had been flickering since noon, the Texas freeze pressing its face against every window, whitening the glass, sealing us inside like a jar. I dragged a chair close to the fireplace and wrapped myself in a quilt that smelled faintly of cedar and the detergent my grandmother used for decades, the kind that lingered even after she was gone. The flames threw shadows that crawled along the walls, stretching family photos into shapes I didn't recognize. I kept thinking I heard ice crack outside, trees snapping under their own weight, but sometimes it was just the fire settling. Sometimes it was the house. My father sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he was bracing for prayer. He'd been quiet all evening, not his usual distracted quiet. This was heavier, like something had finally decided to sit down in his chest and wasn't planning to move. "She wouldn't want you knowing this," he said, not looking at me. I watched the fire instead. "Then why tell me?" He rubbed his palms together, slow, methodical. "Because she's gone, and because things don't stay buried the way we think they do." Outside, the wind shoved against the siding. The lights dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. I thought about my grandmother, Dorothy Dottie Sterling, the woman who baked pies with latticed crusts, so neat they looked measured, who hummed hymns while washing dishes, who smelled like talcum powder in old books. Sweet, that was the word everyone used. Sweet Dottie, preacher's wife, preacher's daughter before that. The kind of woman you trusted with keys, with children, with secrets. My father finally looked up. His eyes were red, but dry. "She ran away in 1968. I laughed before I could stop myself. It came out wrong, sharp, brittle. "Dad, she barely drove. She used to panic at left turns. That was after," he said. "That was what survived." The fire popped. A spark leapt, died. He told me to listen, so I did. And as he spoke, the room around me softened, the edges blurring like I was watching something old projected onto smoke. She wasn't Dottie yet, not really. She was Dorothy Sterling, preacher's daughter, Indiana farm girl with dirt under her nails, and a Bible always within reach whether she wanted it or not. Reverend Silas Sterling believed in order the way other men believed in oxygen. He believed the world was a wild thing that needed breaking, and his daughter was no exception. My father's voice stayed steady, but I could hear the strain in the pauses. He said she met him at a gas station just outside town. He said his name was Jax Mitchell, though back then he answered to anything said with enough confidence. A hoodlum, the police later called him. A drifter, trouble with a smile that looked practiced. I saw him without trying. leaning against a rusted pump, cigarette tucked behind his ear, hair too long for the times, eyes that didn't settle. My father said, she said, that when he looked at her, it felt like being seen through, not judged, measured. The firelight flickered, and for a second, the room smelled like gasoline instead of cedar. She told me he made her feel awake, my father said. Said everything before him felt like sleepwalking. I pulled the quilt tighter. The house creaked. Somewhere down the hall, a pipe knocked, then went quiet. The story slid forward, unstoppable. They left in the middle of the night. No note, no prayer, just a borrowed car, and the kind of certainty that only exists before consequences show up. Indiana fell away behind them, cornfields dissolving into highways. The radio crackling between stations. My grandmother, Dorothy, kept expecting God to reach down and flip the car, or for her father's voice to boom from the clouds, calling her back. Neither happened. That scared her more than punishment would have. They crossed state lines like it was nothing. Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois. The world got wider. Jax laughed a lot, drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, told stories that bent at the edges. Sometimes she believed him. Sometimes she watched his hands and wondered what they'd already done. My father swallowed. The police caught up to them outside Springfield. The lights flickered again, harder this time. For a breathless second, everything went dark. Then the generator kicked in with a low groan, the fire flaring brighter as if pleased to be needed. There was a trooper, he said. Routine stop. Broken taillight. I felt my pulse in my throat. The fire's warmth pressed against my shins. Too hot now. In my mind, the road stretched empty and gray. Winter. Bare trees lining the shoulders like witnesses. The trooper's hand rested near his holster. Jack smiled. Dorothy watched his jaw tighten, a muscle jumping like it was trying to escape. She didn't know when the gun came out. She knew the sound. A crack that split the air open. The trooper staggered back, surprise frozen on his face, then fell wrong, like a puppet dropped by a careless child. After that, everything ran. Illinois blurred into a shaking ribbon of asphalt. Sirens wailed, a sound that crawled under the skin and stayed there. Jax drove like the road owed him something. Tires screaming around curves, fields whipping past. Dorothy's hands were numb. She tasted blood where she'd bitten her lip without realizing. He told her not to look back, my father said softly. She did anyway. The house sighed around us. I imagined red and blue lights staining the night, cutting through corn stubble and frost. I imagined my grandmother's face then. Not the soft one from memory, but sharp, desperate, eyes too bright, mouth set hard. The double-sided woman I'd never been allowed to meet. The chase ended in gunfire. A stand of trees. Orders shouted. Jack stepping out of the car with his hands, half raised, half ready. The shots came fast, too fast to think. He went down in the dirt he'd never planned to stay in. Dorothy screamed. Or maybe she didn't. Trauma edits things strangely. What mattered was that when it was over, she was alive. Bloody, shaking, and alone. She told them he kidnapped her, my father said. Said she was scared that she didn't know what he'd done. She cried. She prayed. She survived. The words sat between us, ugly and bright. Survived. Outside, something cracked. Wood splitting under ice. I flinched, heart racing. The story had reached its edge, but it didn't stop there. It never really does. They believed her. Why wouldn't they? Preacher's daughter. Soft voice. Eyes red with tears that came easily by then. She went home. She folded herself back into the shape expected of her. Married, had children. Baked pies. Learned to flinch at sirens and hide it well. She never told anyone, my father said. Not your mom, not me. I found out because of a box. I looked at him. What box? He hesitated. The fire snapped. After she died, I was cleaning out the attic. There was a lockbox tucked behind the insulation. Inside were newspaper clippings, police reports, and a ring. My breath caught. A ring? Plain, cheap, men's? He met my eyes. She kept it. The room felt smaller. The heat pressed in. I thought about my grandmother's hands, always busy, always steady. I thought about how she'd sometimes stare out the window when the world went quiet, like she was listening for something far away. Dad, I said, and my voice sounded thin to my own ears. Why tell me now? He looked tired. older than he had an hour ago. Because during the freeze, when the power went out, I found her sitting by the fireplace in the dark. This was years ago. She thought I was Silas. She begged me not to send her back. The fire shifted, and for a moment the shadows on the wall looked like running figures. My skin prickled. She called me Jax, he finished. We sat with that. The house groaned. The generator hummed. The storm pressed closer, as if curious. Later, when he went to bed, I stayed by the fire. The story had lodged itself somewhere behind my eyes, playing on a loop. I kept seeing that ring hidden away, a small circle of metal anchoring a lie that had held for decades. The wind howled. Snow hissed against the windows. I told myself stories about inheritance, about trauma echoing through families. I told myself this was just history, just a secret finally told. The fire popped again, loud enough to make me jump. In the brief flare of light, I thought I saw someone standing at the edge of the room, hands half raised, smiling like he'd practiced it. When the flames settled, there was only the chair, empty, quilt, slumped like a shedskin. I stayed there until dawn, listening to the house breathe, wondering what survives us, and what waits for the heat to come back. The first message came at 2:14 a.m., and my mouth went dry, metallic, like I'd bitten down on a coin. Sarah, it's Chloe. I think you're the only one who remembers me the way I really was. The phone felt heavier than it should have, a dead weight pressing into my palm. I sat up in bed, careful not to wake my husband. His breathing stayed even, oblivious. The room smelled faintly of detergent and the stale sweetness of the candle I'd blown out hours earlier. Everything was normal. That was what scared me most. I typed, deleted. Typed again. I remember. The reply came instantly. Can we meet? I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Somewhere outside, a freight train groaned, the sound stretching low and mournful across the dark fields. It dragged something loose in my chest with it. Yes, I wrote. Tell me where. We grew up in a Missouri town that barely existed. One stoplight, one grocery store, a post office that closed for lunch and never quite reopened on time. Dust settled into everything. Summers smelled like hot asphalt, and cut grass left too long in the sun. Chloe Henderson lived 3 blocks from me in a narrow house that always looked finished from a distance and wrong up close. The siding was freshly painted, but the porch boards sagged unevenly. The windows were spotless, yet the curtains never moved, even with the windows cracked. Her parents, Arthur and Martha Vance, were old in a way that had nothing to do with age. Arthur hummed constantly, the same 3 notes over and over, low and tuneless. I used to think it was a habit, something men did when they were bored. Later I understood it was a shield. Martha smiled too quickly, as if responding to a cue. Only she could hear. Her hands were always busy, folding towels that were already folded, straightening picture frames that were already straight. Every clock in the house showed the same time. 3:18 a.m. Kitchen. Living room, hallway. They ticked, but the hands never moved. Chloe was homeschooled. That was what people said, with a tone that implied explanation enough. When she came outside, she sat on the steps with me, our shoulders touching. She laughed in short bursts, like she was rationing it. Sometimes Arthur would call her name from inside. When he did, his humming stopped. Chloe's body would go rigid for half a second before she stood. He doesn't like yelling, she told me once. Says it echoes. The house smelled like boiled cabbage and old books. The air felt thick, padded, like sound couldn't travel properly inside. When I slept over, only once, I woke in the night to that humming through the walls, steady and insistent, drowning out something else. I told myself it was the pipes. That summer, we rode our bikes to the edge of town where the fields open wide. We lay in the grass and stared up at the sky, cicadas drilling into the heat. I dream about a store, Chloe said suddenly. It's huge, no windows, the sound in there. It makes my teeth hurt. What kind of store? I asked. She hesitated. One where everything is too bright, rows and rows of faces staring back at you. Plastic, smiling. I laughed it off. Sounds awful. She didn't laugh with me. The morning the FBI came, the air felt thin, like it might tear. Engines growled outside, doors slammed. My mother swore under her breath and told me to stay inside. I didn't. 3 black SUVs crowded the street in front of the Vance house. Men and women in dark jackets moved with clipped efficiency. The yellow letters on their backs looked unreal, like props. Arthur stepped onto the porch with his hands already raised. His humming was louder than usual, those same 3 notes vibrating in my ears. Martha stood behind him, gripping Chloe's shoulders, so hard her fingers dug into fabric and skin. Chloe looked at me, her mouth opened. Sarah, that was it. Agent surged forward. Martha screamed, a raw sound that didn't seem to belong to a person. Chloe stumbled as they pulled her away, her shoes scraping wood. The world felt washed out, edges too sharp. Cameras appeared from nowhere. Neighbors clustered, whispering. Someone said kidnapped, and the words slid off me without sticking. I remember Arthur on his knees, still humming, eyes closed like he was praying. I remember Martha fighting until they dragged her away, her cardigan slipping off one shoulder. I remember Chloe reaching back once, fingers stretching for empty air. They talked to me later twice, once at our kitchen table, once in a windowless room that smelled like carpet cleaner. They asked what Chloe said, how she acted, what I'd noticed. I told them about the stopped clocks, the humming, the dreams. The woman with the scar on her jaw nodded like each piece fit somewhere ugly and complete. They explained it carefully. Chloe hadn't been Chloe, not at first. She'd been taken from an Oklahoma Walmart 7 years earlier. A bathroom trip, a moment, a man who knew where the toys were. Arthur and Martha's daughter had died the year before. An accident. Martha had tried to kill herself twice. Arthur had decided that taking a child would save them all. They changed names, moved states, built a life that looked almost right if you didn't stare too long. Chloe was sent back to a family she couldn't remember. Arthur and Martha went to prison. Their house emptied out. The clocks were still stuck at 3:18 a.m. when the bank finally sold it. At night, I stood in my bedroom and listened to the distant train, to the echo of humming that wasn't really there. The diner Chloe chose sat just off the highway, a place people passed through without meaning to stay. Vinyl booths, burnt coffee. The smell of grease soaked into everything. She was already there, sitting stiffly, hands wrapped around a mug like it might slip away. She looked like herself, and not at all. Same eyes, same sideways smile. Something in her posture had tightened, pulled inward. Sarah. She stood too fast. We hugged, awkward, careful. They call me something else now, she said as we sat. But that name, it still fits. With you. Her leg bounced under the table. A fork clattered somewhere behind the counter. She flinched. They weren't cruel, she said suddenly, staring into her coffee. Arthur and Martha, I need you to know that. I didn't answer. The silence stretched. He hummed, she went on. All the time, 3 notes. I used to think it was a song later. I realized it was to cover noise, so I wouldn't hear myself. My fingers curled against the vinyl seat. They tucked me in, Sarah. Every night, read me stories. While my real mother was screaming for me in another state, her voice broke, uneven. How do I live with that? The diner hummed around us. A trucker laughed too loud at the counter. Life went on, indifferent. I don't think there's a right way, I said finally. She nodded, like she'd expected that. When we parted, she squeezed my hand. Hard. Don't disappear, she said. Most people do. After that, she called late, quiet. Her voice often came in pieces, sentences breaking off mid-thought. I went back, she said once, to the store. My stomach tightened. It's still there, the sound. It's not just noise, it vibrates, in your bones. I felt sick standing there, like the floor was moving. I imagined it, the endless space, ceiling too high, rows stretching on without landmarks, a place designed to erase time. Sometimes, she said, I think that's why it worked, why I went with him. Everything in there feels unreal, like rules don't apply. After those calls, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My husband asked if I was okay. I said yes. The word tasted thin. I started ignoring things. Dishes left in the sink. Conversations half heard. My phone buzzed, and nothing else mattered. One evening, my husband touched my arm. You're not here, he said gently. I snapped at him, apologized too fast. The look on his face lingered longer than the argument. The last message came on a Tuesday. "I think I know why I survived," Chloe wrote, "because someone decided I was worth taking." I stared at the screen, my throat tight. "That doesn't make it okay," I typed. The dots appeared, vanished. "No," she wrote, "but it makes it complicated." I thought of Arthur Vance humming in the dark, of stopped clocks, of love twisted into something that could cage you. That night, my husband fell asleep alone. I sat on the couch, phone in my hand, the glow reflecting off the window like a second, dimmer world somewhere. Far away, a freight train sounded its low, endless warning, and I understood, with a clarity that scared me, how a single moment in a place meant to swallow people, whole, could keep claiming lives, quietly, patiently, long after everyone thought the story was over. I was 26, the night I returned to my childhood home at 14 Alder Ridge Road, Westfall, Montana, to pack the last of my mother's belongings after her funeral. And from the moment I stepped through the door, I felt something inside the house exhale, like it had been waiting for me to walk back in. The air carried a metallic scent I didn't remember. My mother always burned cinnamon candles this time of year, even when no one came over. But now the place smelled like rusting tools, hidden under the floorboards. It clung to the back of my tongue, faint but insistent, the way the taste of blood lingers after biting your lip too hard. The house was colder than it should have been. I nudged the thermostat with my knuckle, but it flickered, then dimmed again. Maybe the power company hadn't fully reset things after the storm last week. I told myself it was fine. Grief had a way of making ordinary glitches feel sinister. In the den, I found boxes stacked in uneven towers. Some slumped like they'd been opened and closed too many times. I knelt to sort them, rubbing a hand over my tired eyes. That's when I saw the envelope, yellowed, thin, and addressed in my mother's looping script. "Lena, don't ignore what you've inherited. He'll come for you when I'm gone." My breath stalled. It wasn't the words that scared me. Not at first. It was the shaking in her handwriting, as if she'd been terrified while writing it. Inside, folded neatly, was a brittle family tree. Every branch held names and dates until it reached hers. Where my name should have been, there was a blank line, like someone had erased me, or like she'd added me later. A patch on a branch that didn't belong, I whispered. "Mom, what the hell were you hiding?" My voice sounded small in the empty room. Snow thickened outside until the windows blurred into white smears. That was when someone knocked. 3 slow taps that vibrated through the wooden frame. I felt the sound in my chest more than I heard it. The wind didn't knock, and no one came this far on a night like this. I hesitated before opening the door. No one stood there. Only a Polaroid rested on the top step, its edges damp from snow. My mother holding a baby I didn't recognize. On the back, written with the same trembling hand, "My firstborn." My mouth went dry. I never had siblings. The next morning, I found another Polaroid slipped under the front door. The baby was older in this one, maybe 4 or 5, and behind him stood a tall man. His face blurred in a streaked smudge, as if the film couldn't capture it. My stomach tightened when I noticed the silhouette. Broad shoulders, long arms, a slight forward tilt of the head. He looked like me. I dialed my aunt, my fingers icy. When she picked up, her breath stuttered through the line. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I demanded. "There was another child." She didn't answer at first. Then, in a cracked whisper, "He wasn't supposed to find you. We changed everything to keep him away, Lena. You weren't taken. You were traded." A cold wave rolled through me. What does that mean? But she hung up. The silence afterward felt heavy, deliberate. That night, the knocking returned, this time above me. A slow, dragging thud echoed from the attic. Dust drifted from the ceiling in soft gray clouds. The metallic scent thickened, sharp enough that it coated my teeth. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself grief was twisting reality, but the sound didn't stop. It grew rhythmic, familiar, like someone dragging something heavy across the rafters. Finally, unable to take it, I climbed the attic ladder, my legs trembling. The air tightened the higher I went, as if the space were shrinking around me. At the top, my flashlight beam cut through dust motes that swirled like ash, and I saw footprints, long, bare footprints, space too wide for any normal stride, leading toward the far corner. The rocking chair there swayed back and forth, slowly, though the attic had no draft. My skin prickled. A folded note lay on the seat. I forced myself to pick it up. "Your blood remembers me." I felt watched. Studied like someone stood inches behind me, breathing quietly, waiting for me to turn. I ran, down the ladder, through the hallway, out into the snow. I didn't even grab my coat. My breath tore from my lungs as I stumbled toward my car. I told myself I wasn't coming back. Not tonight. Not ever. But before I could unlock the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. A single photo. Me, standing in the attic. Taken from just behind my shoulder. The room in the picture was empty, but I felt the warmth of someone close behind me, as if the camera had captured something my eyes weren't allowed to see. I drove away, praying distance would break whatever was reaching for me. But distance didn't matter, because the metallic scent followed. I woke the next morning in my apartment 3 towns over, shivering despite the heater blasting. The metallic smell seeped through the room like invisible smoke. I checked my clothes, nothing. Checked my hair, clean. Checked the vents, just warm air. But the scent settled into my sheets, thick and unpleasantly sweet, like old blood left too long in the open. I hadn't brought anything back from the house. I made sure of it. But the scent clung anyway. By afternoon, I convinced myself sleep deprivation was distorting things. Grief did strange things to the senses. Maybe the photos, the attic, the note, all of it was igniting some psychological echo chamber. But even as I rationalized, my nerves thrummed like they were preparing for impact. Near dusk, a soft tapping reached my ears. I froze. It came from the far end of the apartment. 3 slow taps. My pulse hammered as I crossed the living room. The tapping repeated, patient, as if whoever was doing it knew I would answer eventually. The sound came from the balcony door. I approached cautiously. The curtains swayed slightly in the heater's breeze. When I pulled them back, the entire balcony lay empty beneath the yellow streetlight glow. Snowflakes drifted sideways in the wind. Nothing else moved, but on the glass, a smear appeared. Long vertical, as if someone had dragged a wet fingertip downward. The trail glistened faintly. I wiped it with my sleeve. Metallic scent bloomed instantly. I stumbled back, gagging. The taste crawled down my throat like it wanted to anchor itself inside me. That night, sleep evaded me. Every creak in the building felt deliberate. Every hum of the pipe sounded like a breath drawn just out of sight. I kept replaying my aunt's trembled words. You weren't taken. You were traded. Traded for what? By whom? Why me? Around 3:20 a.m. The tapping returned, not from the balcony. From somewhere inside the apartment, 3 slow taps, followed by silence thick enough to choke on. I dialed my aunt again. She picked up after the 4th ring, voice trembling. "Aunt Carol," I whispered. "Please, I need the truth." Her inhale shook through the phone. "Your mother? She made a deal she didn't understand. She believed she could bargain with something older than us. Something that wanted a child born with its bloodline. She offered her firstborn, but she couldn't go through with it, so she hid him, then hid you." I clutched the bridge of my nose. "Why would I matter to him?" "Because you share his blood," she said, "and blood remembers what it's owed." I heard something behind me, a faint scrape, a shifting weight from the hallway. "Carol," I whispered, "he's here." The line went dead. I turned slowly. The hallway stretched long and dim, each shadow feeling too heavy, too anchored. My breath came fast and shallow, fogging in the cold air. Then I saw them, footprints bare, elongated, trailing from my bedroom toward the living room carpet. They glistened faintly, as though wet. I backed toward the kitchen. The apartment seemed to constrict, walls tightening, ceiling pressing down. I could almost sense him behind me, the same presence from the attic, the same invisible weight in the Polaroid. I grabbed my car keys, forcing myself to move. But as I crossed the living room, the tapping returned, this time inches behind me. 3 slow taps on the floor. I bolted down the stairs, out into the brittle night air, slipping on ice as I ran for my car. My breath felt thick, metallic, like I was breathing in the same scent that clung to everything now. I started the engine and sped through empty streets, carved by plows hours earlier. I didn't stop until I reached the next county. I checked into a roadside motel under a different name. Every instinct screamed that if he could find me at home, he could find me anywhere. But I needed even a temporary illusion of safety. But illusions crumble fast. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old fabric softener. Until it didn't. Within minutes, the metallic scent seeped in. Slow, creeping, familiar. I sank onto the bed, shaking uncontrollably. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Another photo. This one showed the motel room door, taken from the outside. A second photo arrived, my silhouette sitting on the bed. Taken from the window, a third dark grainy, showing the bathroom door slightly ajar, as if someone stood just inside. My pulse thundered. My vision blurred. Then the final message came. The trade is overdue. I dropped the phone. The metallic scent thickened until it felt physical, pressing against my skin. Outside, through the thin motel walls, I heard it again. 3 slow taps, the same patient rhythm that had followed me from my childhood home. The same reminder that blood, no matter how far it runs, always finds its way back to what it was promised. I was 27 when I stepped onto the sagging porch of 108 Sparrowgate Lane, and the house breathed out a smell I remembered, but could never place: damp wood, old paper, and something metallic, as if time had bled here. I stood with my mother's sealed envelope in one hand, and the new deed in the other, feeling like a trespasser in a life I barely recalled. The autumn light hung low, stretched thin, and in the silence that followed my footsteps, I had the uneasy sense of being watched by something deeper than walls. I pushed open the door, and the house greeted me with a groan that sounded almost resentful. Dust floated in the stillness like slow, moving snow. The living room sat exactly as my childhood memory held it. Brown couch, leaning floor lamp, faded rug, but everything felt too undisturbed, as if someone had pressed pause the day we fled and never came back to unfreeze it. I whispered, "Mom, what were you so afraid of?" But my voice fell flat, swallowed before it reached the hallway. The envelope seal cracked easily, the paper brittle with age. Inside was a single photograph, my parents in this very doorway, smiling stiffly, each holding one side of a little girl. A little girl who wasn't me. On the back, in my mother's careful, looping handwriting, "Our first attempt." My throat tightened. Attempt. The word tasted wrong, clinical. My parents never mentioned another child, no photos, no birthdays. And yet the girl in the picture had my jawline, my hair color, even the same dimple on her left cheek. I tried to draw a line through memory, 9 years old, grabbing my teddy bear as we left in a panic. My mother saying we couldn't stay, that the house was unsafe. But the why had always been missing. Now it felt like the house had been waiting for me to ask. I walked down the hallway, each step stirring the faintest tremor in the floorboards. They answered like someone pacing just out of sight. When I pressed my palm to the wallpaper, cold radiated through it sharply enough to sting. A sound rose from behind the plaster, a whispery hum, like someone breathing through old fabric. I pulled my hand away and told myself houses settle, that memory exaggerates. But the sound lingered. I found the basement door locked, a rusted padlock hanging unevenly. I tugged it once, then again harder. The lock didn't budge. Of course, I muttered, forcing a laugh that didn't quite land. Why make anything easy? As I stepped back, a loose board nudged my foot. Behind it, dust puffed out in a warm, stale wave. I knelt and saw a hidden cubby, cramped and dark. Inside lay tiny dresses folded with impossible care. Children's drawings, all the same hand. Stick figures with circular eyes and crooked smiles. A music box shaped like a bird cage, its brass tarnished green at the edges. When I wound it with hesitant fingers, the tune limped out, off-key and trembling. And under it, clear as breath on my neck, I heard a child whisper, "Don't let them forget me again." I flinched so hard the box slipped from my hands. The melody sputtered. The whisper didn't. Footsteps thundered overhead, small, frantic, running in tight circles across the upstairs landing. Dust drifted from the ceiling beams like shaken snow. My pulse surged. I called out, "Who's there?" But the only response was a faint laugh, thin and close, like it came from just behind my ear. Panic pushed me toward the front door. The knob refused to turn. I rattled it, twisted, yanked, nothing. Then it turned slightly on its own, just enough to click, as if someone on the other side had grasped it. I backed away, breath shaking. A moment later, a fresh photograph slid under the door with a soft scrape. I froze before picking it up. It showed me standing on the staircase inside the house. Taken from behind, I had felt no presence, heard no shudder, sensed no one close enough to capture something this intimate and precise. Fight or flight surged, and flight won. I crashed through the nearest side window, glass splintering around me. Cold air slapped my face as I bolted to my car. My hands fumbled the keys, and I nearly sobbed when the engine finally caught. Only when I reached the highway did I glance into the rearview mirror. The birdcage music box sat upright in the back seat, wound. Ticking, waiting. I hadn't carried it out. I hadn't touched it. After the whisper, my apartment felt safer in memory than it ever had in reality. But when I stumbled inside hours later, locking everything twice, the air held a new weight. A heaviness that followed me like a small shadow with a long memory. For the first week, I told myself everything had an explanation. An overactive mind, grief twisting old memories, adrenaline distorting the present. But each night, without fail, the music box played from somewhere in the apartment, soft and wandering, like a lullaby sung through cracked teeth. Sometimes the melody came from the kitchen, other nights, the hallway, once from directly beneath my bed. I tried sleeping with the lights on. I tried unplugging every device. I wrapped the music box in towels, zipped it into a suitcase, buried it behind winter coats in the closet. Still, the song found me. Worse, now the footsteps did too. Small, quick, pacing just beyond my sightline. And always at 3:11 a.m., the exact minute my childhood memory faded into black. I started calling my mother's old contacts, desperate for anyone who could explain what first attempt meant. Most numbers were disconnected. A few people hung up the moment I said my mother's name. One woman, her voice shaking, managed. "Honey, you shouldn't open doors your mother nailed shut," before ending the call. By the 10th night, sleep felt impossible. I sat on my couch with a mug of cold coffee, watching shadows dance under the stovelight. My mind kept circling the same questions. Who was the girl? Why had my parents buried her existence? Why did the house feel alive? And why did whatever lived in it follow me? At 3:11 a.m., the music began again. This time louder. I walked into the hallway, heart pounding against my ribs. The tune drifted from the bedroom. "Stop," I whispered, though I didn't know who I was begging. My fingers trembled as I pushed open the door. The suitcase lay in the center of the floor, unzipped. The towels were removed, folded neatly beside it. The music box sat upright, spinning slowly, and scattered around it were photographs, dozens of me as a child. But not the childhood I remembered. In some photos, I was holding the girl from the original picture. In others, she stood alone, smiling, while I appeared beside her. But blurred, as if I were the one fading. One image made my breath stutter, the two of us at age 6, identical except for her eyes. Darker, empty air, a void pretending to be human. A fresh one rested on the bed. I picked it up with numb fingers. Me today, sitting on this very floor, reaching for this very photo. My knees buckled. I whispered, "What do you want?" But the room answered, with only a soft rhythmic tapping, small feet pattering along the wall behind my headboard. For days I avoided sleep. Every reflective surface felt like a doorway. Every sound felt intentional. My mind frayed at the edges, unraveling thread by thread. I stopped going to work. My phone died and I didn't charge it. I lived in the narrow slice of time between fear and exhaustion. Then, one morning, after a stretch of sleepless darkness, an envelope slid under my apartment door. It was addressed to Mara, but the handwriting wasn't my mother's this time. Inside was a single photograph, me as a child, standing between my parents and the girl who could have been my mirror. If you drained something vital from me. On the back, 2 messages, one in my mother's familiar script, "One of you had to live," and beneath it, scrawled freshly, in uneven lettering still shiny with wet ink, "I remember you now, Mara." I dropped the photograph. It stuck to my palm, as if clinging. I backed into the hallway and froze. The music box was playing upstairs. Except I didn't have an upstairs. Slow creaks spread across the ceiling, measured, and patient small footsteps. Pacing in the attic I didn't have. The sound grew clearer, closer, as if something was peeling itself out of the air between floors. A child's whisper drifted down, warm as breath. "Come play where you left me." I pressed my back to the front door, gripping the knob hard enough to hurt. But something on the other side twisted it in the opposite direction. Soft laughter filled the apartment. Familiar now, I closed my eyes because looking felt dangerous. The last thing I heard before the lights flickered out was the voice, inches from my ear. "Only one of us gets to keep this life." And then the footsteps began descending the invisible stairs toward me, each one slow, deliberate, and impossibly certain, like she already knew which of us deserved to stay. I was 28. The winter morning I stepped into 412 Marl Pines Road and felt the air press against my skin, like the house was trying to inhale me. The cold outside hadn't bothered me at all, but the moment the front door groaned shut behind me, an oppressive warmth settled into my bones. A thick, stale heat that felt strangely aware of me. I remember standing there for a moment, snow melting off my boots, listening to the quiet, too quiet. Even dust motes seemed to hang motionless in the air, suspended as if the entire place had paused mid-breath. My grandmother's house hadn't changed since the single visit I barely remembered. Wallpaper yellowed like old teeth, furniture lined precisely as though measured, the faint scent of lavender sachets mixed with mold drifting from corners. "My mother never let me come back here. Some homes remember their mistakes," she used to say, with a tone that suggested the home was not the only thing guilty. I walked deeper into the hallway, running a gloved finger over a row of framed photographs, all perfectly centered, but none of them showed me. Not as a child, not with my mother, not with anyone who resembled us. Instead, faces I didn't recognize stared back, stern women, grim children, a line of people who looked vaguely alike but felt unrelated to any memory I owned. I tried focusing on the task, settle the estate, sign probate paperwork, pack the things worth salvaging, and leave before the early sunset iced over the road. My mind, though, kept circling the unease clinging to the walls, as if the house was evaluating me. Approving or disapproving, I couldn't tell. Upstairs the air thinned. I opened each door slowly, announcing myself out of some strange instinct. Just me, just checking boxes. My voice sounded too loud, like I was interrupting someone. In the hallway closet, beneath folded linens that smelled faintly of detergent and decay, a floorboard shifted when I stepped on it. Not a normal hollow creak. Something closer to a groan, like pressure forcing wood to move. I knelt down, prying up the corner of the board using a loose nail. Beneath it sat a wax paper bundle, brittle and yellowed. I unwrapped it with careful fingers. Inside was a document titled, "The First Will of Agnes Linden." The date was impossibly old, well before my mother's birth. Yet the ink appeared too dark, too fresh. My pulse climbed as I read the beneficiary clause, to Clara Linden. My second granddaughter, my exact name, but I was her only granddaughter. A faint tapping echoed from downstairs. Not like pipes or settling wood, more deliberate. I followed the sound to the living room, where a rotary phone rested on a lace doily. It had no cord, no connection to anything. Yet, as I approached, the phone rang again, short, piercing, impatient. I lifted the receiver with trembling fingers. "Clara," a woman whispered, voice papery fragile. "They hid you from me," static burst in my ear. Then, another voice won. I recognized instantly from old videos of her birthday speeches. My grandmother. "Don't trust the one who calls herself mother." I dropped the receiver, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the floorboards open on its own. I called my mother on video. She answered instantly, breathless. "Clara, are you okay? I found a will. It says I'm her second granddaughter." And there were voices on. Her eyes widened in terror. "Clara, get out of that house now." "What's happening?" "If the floorboards opened for you," she whispered, glancing off. "Screen as if someone stood just beyond view. It means she's awake." A heavy creak sounded above me. I turned slowly, staring at the ceiling as another footstep came. Slow, dragging, uneven. The sound of someone rediscovering muscles long unused. "Mom," I breathed, Simona's upstairs. Leave, she begged. Please. But something in the house shifted, an old, unseen mechanism locking into place. The air thickened again, lavender curling around me with a sweetness that nearly masked the rot beneath it. A shadow stretched down the stairs, impossibly long, elongating before any figure appeared. I backed away into the dining room, knocking over a box. Papers spilled out, loose envelopes, some torn open, each in my grandmother's frantic handwriting. They switched the children. One was chosen, one was erased. Clara is not the one you think. A violent crack sounded above, the attic door slamming open. My body moved before thought could catch up. I bolted for the back door, slipping on the icy porch steps and charging into the trees until the house shrank behind a wall of dark pines. When I finally reached my car, lungs burning, I checked my phone. One new message, a photograph. Me standing in the living room minutes earlier, but in the photo, a woman stood behind me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder, her face older, but unmistakably mine. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. The woman's face in the photograph, older, yes, but shaped from the same bone structure as mine, stared at the camera with an expression that could only be described as possessive satisfaction, as though she hadn't just found me, but reclaimed me. I wanted to believe it was a trick of the light, a glitch, someone using a filter to make a stranger look related. But the eyes, they were mine, but darker, sharper, knowing in a way I didn't yet understand. Snow fell in heavy clumps against the windshield as I backed out of the driveway. My hands were shaking so badly, the keys nearly slipped from my grip. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting her to suddenly appear in the back seat. The scent of lavender lingered in my coat, so strong it clung to my tongue. I made it to the nearest hotel in Elmridge, an aging roadside place with humming neon lights and a front desk clerk who barely looked up as I checked in. When I reached my room, I locked the door, pushed a chair against it, then stood in the middle of the carpeted floor, unable to move. Everything inside me buzzed with a kind of panic that doesn't let you collapse, because it keeps whispering that falling asleep will make you pray. I spread the photo on the bed. Up close, something else emerged. Details I'd missed before. Behind my older double, the wallpaper in the picture was peeling in a different pattern than it had minutes earlier when I stood in that same spot. The photo wasn't taken with me in the room. It was taken in a room that remembered itself differently. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother, Clara. Answer me. Where are you, please? I hesitated before calling. When she picked up, her voice shook as though she'd been waiting without exhaling. Mom, I whispered. What did she mean? They switched the children. Who is the other Clara? Her silence was a small, agonizing eternity. Then, I never wanted you to know. Your grandmother. She didn't want one heir. She wanted two. A pair. One to raise, one to keep for herself. The words tightened something deep in my chest. Mom, that doesn't make sense. I was her only no, she cut in. Voice breaking, no, you weren't. The heating unit in the hotel room clicked loudly, then began blowing cold air, despite the thermostat reading nearly 90 degrees. I don't understand, I said, rubbing my forehead, trying to force my brain to stay organized. If there were two of us, then where's the other? She died, my mother whispered, or that's what we thought. We left that house to save you. We stole you away before your grandmother could choose between you. Agnes called it the culling. I called it insanity. Lavender rolled through the room then. So sudden, so thick, I gagged. The curtains fluttered even though the window was latched. Mom, I whispered, she's here. Don't look in any mirrors, she said frantically. Don't let her match your reflection. That's how she... Her voice cut out, replaced by static. Then faintly, another voice crawled through the line. Second granddaughter. I dropped the phone on the bed and backed toward the bathroom, thinking I just needed water, a splash on my face, something grounding. But halfway there, I froze. The bathroom light flickered under the door, a soft, pulsing glow like someone was pacing just inside. No, I wasn't going in there. I grabbed my bag, shoved the photo inside, and unlocked the hotel door. But the hallway had changed. The patterned carpet was the same, but the walls had turned the faded rose-colored wallpaper from my grandmother's house, and the lavender smell was suffocating now. Clara. The voice came softly from the far end of the hall. I knew that voice. Not because it had spoken aloud before, but because hearing it felt like recognizing a memory I never lived. A silhouette stepped into view. A woman, my age or older. Hard to tell from the distance. She moved with a slow grace, her hand dragging along the wall, like she was steadying herself after a long sleep. I ran. The hallway stretched, bending into a shape the hotel had never been built for. Doors warped, becoming the tall, narrow doors from Morrow Pines Road. The lights flickered, strobing the corridor into a series of still images. The woman a step closer, then another, then impossibly near. I shoved myself into the stairwell and flew down the steps until the exit door burst open into the freezing night. I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of the parking lot, lungs tearing from cold air. Behind me, one of the hotel windows glowed with a soft lavender, colored light. I drove without thinking. Hours blurred. Towns passed as snow thickened across the highway. Only once I reached my apartment in Tacoma did the buzzing in my head begin to settle. I showered. I changed clothes. I tried to convince myself I was safe. But the moment I turned off the bathroom light, two reflections lingered for a heartbeat too long. Mine and hers. The lavender scent drifted from my vents at midnight, and this morning, an envelope lay at my door. To Clara Linden, my rightful granddaughter. I was 29 when I agreed to help my aunt clear out Hillcrest End Home, 603 Lanternwood Road, Brookdale, Oregon. And from the first step over the threshold, I felt something in that house was already aware of me. The air was colder than it should have been for a late autumn afternoon, heavy in a way that pressed against my ribs. Even the dust seemed unnaturally arranged, not random, but patterned, as though someone had swept only the spots they wanted me to step on. My aunt, Mary Ann, moved briskly ahead through the foyer, pretending not to notice the way the floorboards creaked under her with a long, reluctant groan. But I noticed everything. The faint chemical sweetness beneath the scent of wood rot, the tightness in her shoulders, the way the house felt like it was holding its breath, as if waiting to exhale until we were deep inside its walls. I tried to shake the feeling. This was just a favor. Family obligation. A weekend of sorting boxes so the property could finally be sold. But the family tree in the parlor stopped me cold. Its cracked glass reflected my own face back at me. My name, Emily, clean and precise beneath my parents'. But the branch under my mother's name had been snapped off. Not removed, broken. The jagged tear in the wood looked violently fresh, like someone had done it recently and with purpose. "Hey, this is weird," I said, pointing toward it. Mary Ann barely glanced. "We don't keep unfinished things on display," she said quickly, too quickly, and hurried out of the room. Her eyes hadn't met mine once. By evening, the house's chill had become an ache in my joints. While sorting boxes upstairs, I stumbled upon a stack of journals tied with brittle twine. My grandmother's handwriting slanted across the top one, for the one who was left behind. The phrase lodged in my throat. I opened the first entry. At first, the words didn't make sense. Rambling notes, dated decades apart, all referencing a daughter born minutes before my mother, a daughter given away at birth, a daughter claimed by someone else. My breath thinned. A twin. My mother had a twin. My grandmother had written of her, as if she were something that grew silently in the dark places of the family, and threatened to break through. I found Mary Ann gripping the upstairs banister, her eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond me. "Why didn't anyone tell me Mom had a sister?" I asked. Her hand tightened hard enough to whiten her knuckles. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't ask about her. Some parts of the family, they grew in the dark. Your mother tried to prune the branch, but it kept growing back." Her voice shook on the last word. I wanted to push her, to demand answers, but a cold draft moved between us, and she flinched like the house had spoken first. I didn't sleep, not that night. The floor above me creaked with long, deliberate footfalls, too slow to be pipes settling. A faint lullaby drifted through the ductwork, a soft, tinkling melody, like a music box winding itself backward. Over and over, I followed the sound down the hall and found myself in the old nursery no one had used in decades. The rocking chair moved gently, creaking with a slow rhythm, as if someone invisible sat there, rocking with infinite patience. On the floor was a Polaroid, A woman who looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same tilt of the chin. But older. Her smile was pulled too wide. The corners stretching, as if something inside her wanted out. On the back, in smeared ink, "The first daughter never forgets." I felt something shift inside me. Fear cracking open like a fault line. My shadow on the floor lengthened unnaturally, stretching until the fingers looked too long, too thin. And then a second shadow appeared beside mine. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. The second shadow's head tilted just like mine, but I hadn't moved at all. I bolted, glass cutting my palms as I smashed the nearest window and leapt into the yard. I heard the lullaby behind me, quieter now, like it was retreating only because it knew it didn't have to chase. By the time police arrived, the journals were gone. Completely gone. The family tree lay shattered on the floor, names crossed out, rearranged with fresh ink that hadn't been there hours earlier. Mary Ann insisted we must have broken it ourselves. Her voice was too calm, her face too pale. I didn't argue, I just left. The next morning, a thin white envelope rested at my apartment door. No return address. Inside was a Polaroid of me sleeping, my hair spread across my pillow, my face relaxed. I would have believed it was a selfie taken while half asleep. Except I hadn't taken it, and except for the figure in the photo beside me, a woman with my face, my eyes, my mouth. Her head resting on my pillow as though she lived there, as though she belonged there. On the back, the missing branch has grown back. Make room. Part 2. 750 words. I didn't remember coming inside the apartment the night before. My coat was draped neatly on the hook, my boots arranged side by side, and the lights were dimmed to the soft setting I only used when I read before bed. But I hadn't been reading. I'd spent the night clutching a steering wheel, driving in circles around town, until the sky cracked with the first pale streaks of dawn. Yet, the apartment felt used, lived in, by someone who'd done the things I was too shaken to remember. I locked the door with trembling fingers. Every sound inside the apartment took on sharp edges. The refrigerator hum deepened, until it sounded like a low growl. The ticking of the wall clock stalled, resumed, then stalled again. The heater vent coughed out a single warm breath, as if clearing its throat. I kept replaying the Polaroid in my mind, the woman with my face, lying beside me like she had every right to be there. I checked my bedroom. The sheets were cool, untouched. I stripped the bed, checking the seams, the frame, the underside of the box spring. Nothing. No sign of anyone but me. Still, the air felt different, heavy, claimed. The apartment's narrow hallway was lined with framed photos. My childhood birthdays, college graduation, last year's trip to Denver. When I brushed past them, I froze. Something was off. In the picture from my 6th birthday, my father's hand rested on my shoulder, but the angle of his hand had changed. Instead of lying flat, his fingers curled, slightly gripping my shirt. I blinked hard, leaning in. The photo grain shifted faintly, like it was still settling. "That's not real," I whispered to myself. "You're just tired." But a memory surfaced then, uninvited. My mother brushing my hair when I was small, murmuring, "You were meant to be alone, sweetheart. Some children should never meet their mirrors." I had never understood what she meant. I'd assumed she was talking about cousins I never met. But what if a soft tapping interrupted my thoughts? 3 gentle taps on the hallway wall. Not the door, the wall. I pressed my palm flat against the cool paint, holding my breath. Another tap directly opposite my hand. Like someone tapping back, my fingers recoiled. I tried to steady myself. I wasn't a frightened child. I wasn't losing my mind. There had to be a logical explanation. Stress, hallucination, exhaustion, anything, but the idea forming at the edges of my thoughts. The missing twin, raised in the dark by someone who believed she belonged elsewhere. A sister who looked like me. A sister who felt entitled to return. A sister who apparently had never stopped watching. I moved from room to room, turning on every light. The brightness helped only a little. Shadows still pooled under the furniture, too dark for midday. I sat on the couch with the Polaroid, studying the edges. Something about the figure beside me unnerved me more than her resemblance. Her body was angled toward mine, head tilted with unsettling tenderness. As if she had been whispering into my sleeping ear. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "You slept so peacefully." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the hardwood. My breath stuttered. I typed back with shaking fingers. "Who is this?" The response came instantly. "Your other half." My vision tunneled. The apartment walls seemed to narrow, bending inward as though reacting to the text. The tapping resumed, this time from inside the bedroom. A slow, rhythmic knock on the back of my closet door. I backed away, pulse hammering. The door creaked open by itself, inch by inch, revealing hanging clothes swaying gently. Though there was no draft, a voice, my voice, whispered from the dark. "I've been here longer than you think." I stumbled toward the front door, fumbling with the lock, desperate to leave. But a second breath exhaled behind me, warm, close, too close. I froze. 2 sets of breathing filled the apartment, mine fast and shallow, the other slow and steady, as if it were savoring the moment. I ran, bolted down the stairs, out into the raw air. I didn't know where I was going, just away. But as I reached the parking lot, I caught sight of a figure in the reflection of a car window. A woman standing behind me, my height, my posture, my face. Smiling, that too, wide smile I'd seen in the Polaroid. When I spun around, there was no one there. I don't remember getting back inside. I don't remember locking the door. The apartment is quiet now, too quiet. The kind of quiet that listens. But I know I'm not alone. I can feel her in the walls, in the mirrors, in the air when I breathe. And as I write this, I hear it again. 2 sets of breathing. One of them is mine. The other is waiting for me to fall asleep.
"Ian, didn't you hear the captain calling?" Carter asked. I moved my gaze from the notes on my desk and looked in his direction. He was standing by the entrance to my room, hands on his hips. He looked furious and impatient. "What's going on?" I asked. "We have an emergency. HQ wants to send us on a rescue mission." "Rescue? Who?" I raised my eyebrows. "No idea. The briefing's already started. Come on, let's get to the control room." Before I could ask him anything else, he turned and went down the hallway. I arranged my notes neatly and exited my room. The corridor leading down echoed with my footsteps and Carter's own in the distance. The spaceship was big enough for me to still sometimes lose direction, but at least it was equipped with gravitational panels so we could get around more easily without floating and getting disoriented like in the early stages of the simulation. I turned right at the corner and saw Carter stopping in front of the control room door. He turned around and waited for me to get closer. Once I did, he pressed the big square button next to the door, which made it slide sideways. Immediately, we were hit by the sound of murmurs as our other crew members discussed something around the holographic map in the middle. Behind the crew was a row of control panels sitting in front of a huge pane of glass. I glanced at the dark space beyond the glass, filled with hundreds of stars in the distance, unreachable still to mankind. It often made me realize how insignificant we are, and how easily we can get swept away in an instant in this cold abyss, and no one would ever even know. I was shaken back to reality by Captain Adams' stern voice. "Ian, late again. Sit down," he said. The crew consisted of 6 members altogether, and we had mandatory meetings every morning and evening to go through the list of inspections. So when Carter called me for an unexpected meeting at 5 p.m., I knew something must have gone terribly wrong. I sat down and waited for the captain to speak. He said, "Earlier today, there was an incident on board the ISS-14. We don't know what exactly happened, but supposedly there are casualties and Earth lost contact with them. HQ wants us to go there immediately and provide rescue to anyone alive."
"But that place is pretty far away,"
the team medic Riley said.
"It'll take us at least a few hours to get there, and we're not rescue services."
"Yeah, but there's no one closer to them than us. Now, I know that this is not our line of work, but it has to be us. We go there, look for any survivors, and go back home." "Wait, What about the mining operation? James asked. HQ wants us to put it on hold. Right now, the priority is rescuing the ISS-14 crew and escorting them back home. Fine, I'll start the engine, Hank, the pilot, said. He stood up and went to the control panel with Carter, and the two of them pressed a series of buttons. Every crew member was trained to pilot the ship, but only Carter and Hank could do it outside of any emergency situations. The ship hummed to life, the floor under our feet slightly vibrating. The view outside started rotating to the right, making the stars dance across the window. When it stopped, it was impossible to tell which direction we were facing. However, the pilots somehow knew it from the radar, and we were able to determine which direction to move in. The ship started moving forward slowly, but gained speed gradually. It looked as if we were pinned in one spot, but I knew that with each second passed, we covered miles of the inhospitable vacuum of space. There, Hank leaned in his chair. We should be there in about 3 hours. Well, keep your eyes open, the captain said, and try to see if you can get in contact with him in the meantime. He stood up and left the room. I followed and went back to the crew quarters. I closed the shutters on my window and sat down on my bed. Although some of the crew members enjoyed the unique view from the windows in their rooms, I tended to avoid gazing outside, especially if I was left alone with my thoughts. Sitting on my bed, I went to join Hank and Carter in the control room. The two of them were casually chatting by the control panel when they saw me join and offered me to join in on the conversation. So I was just telling Carter that the guys on the ISS-14 are probably just blackout drunk. Hank chuckled and craned his neck in my direction. What do you think? I don't know. It's strange to just lose contact like that. They might have had a serious issue, I said. Well, whatever the case, we'll find out soon. We're almost there. See that? Carter said and pointed to the window. I squinted and realized that he was pointing at a dot in the distance. As minutes went by, the dot grew closer, and more prominent shapes gradually became apparent. It began to take the shape of a man-made flying object, and I recognized its disproportionately large wings as solar panels reflecting sunlight. It's still there, and it seems still intact, Hank said. He leaned in and pressed a button on the control panel. As he held it like that, he said, "We can see them. Everybody, get down here." In a matter of minutes, everyone was in the control room, and the ISS-14 was a lot closer and bigger, displaying more and more visible details on the structure, like joints, pressurized modules, etc. Adams pressed a button on the control panel and said, "This is the US Collector 03. Does anyone copy?" He released the button and we waited in silence. Nothing but the humming of the ship was heard. Adams pressed the button and spoke again. "This is the US Collector 03. ISS-14. Do you copy?" No response. Adams sighed. "Well, I guess we're going in. Bring us in closer, Hank." "Ian." He looked at me. "Suit up. I gave him a silent nod of agreement and proceeded to the lockers. I donned my suit and put my helmet on. I double-checked if the thrusters on the boots were functioning, refilled the oxygen tank, and made sure everything was tightly secured. Once that was done, I proceeded down to the airlock. Riley was waiting in front and inspected my gear once more to make sure everything was safe.
Alright, you're good to go,
she said, giving me a pat on the shoulder. I pressed the button to open the airlock and stepped inside. In front of me was the second airlock door and a small round window, the final line of defense that separated me from a potentially painful demise. Riley pressed the button again and sealed the door behind me. I attached the safety cord to my suit and pulled down the lever on the left side of the wall. "Depressurizing airlock, stand by," a computerized voice announced. I glanced through the round window facing the interior of the ship and smiled at Riley. "I'll be back in a bit," I said encouragingly. "Airlock depressurized. Opening airlock. Ready." I pressed the button next to the second door. It opened with a hiss, and instantly, everything except my breathing went silent. The weight of my body was lifted, and I was floating mid-air. I used the thrusters to propel myself out of the airlock, and finally stepped into the vast, empty space. That initial moment felt nauseating at first, leaping out of the spaceship and expecting to see ground beneath you, but instead being met with an endless abyss which threatened to swallow you whole. The ISS-14 towered above me now, much larger up close than I suspected it to be, a silent behemoth which took up almost the entire view in front. The docking bay was right in front of me, so I proceeded there as quickly as the thrusters would allow me. Despite being able to go only 8 miles per hour, I didn't worry about the speed, since I had enough oxygen to go for at least 6 hours, so hopefully I'd be back to the ship by then. "Ian, do you copy?" Carter's voice came through the radio. "Yep, loud and clear," I responded. "Alright, listen, we scanned the area with thermals, and there's no sign of anyone being alive on board the station." "What? Are you sure? Maybe the device malfunctioned." "Definitely not, because we picked up a sign of life outside the ship." "Repeat that last," I said. "There's indication that one of the crew members is spacewalking outside the ship. See that gray node just around the upper right-hand solar panel? He should be around there." "Roger that," I said and looked up. Beyond the top of the station was exactly what was under it. Endless, vast void. It was a long ascent, especially because of the speed of the thrusters, but I slowly made my way up. Halfway there, I stopped at the sight in front of me. "Holy shit," I mumbled. "Ian, you okay?" James asked. I stared in bewilderment, unable to respond. The airlock, which led inside the station, was wide open. That was not uncommon if astronauts went on repair missions which were short. But what bothered me here was the fact that both airlock doors were wide open, letting out all the air. "Guys," I said, "something bad happened here. Both airlock doors are wide open." There was silence on the other end, until Riley simply uttered a dumbfounded,
"What?"
"Probably human error," I said. "That's impossible," Adams scoffed. "The system would have warned them tenfold. You would have to be a complete idiot, suicidal even, to make a mistake like that one." "Well then, I can't explain this," I said and continued ascending. Pretty soon, I reached the top and had a good view of the entire station. The place seemed completely undamaged, so it made sense to me that someone simply made a mistake when opening the airlock. "Any sign of survivors?" Adams asked. I scanned the area and at first saw nothing. And then I noticed it. An astronaut, blended with the white exterior of the station, just floating around, upside down. He showed no signs of movement, so I assumed he was either dead or unconscious. I see something. Hold up. I leaned forward and activated the thrusters once more. As I got closer, I tried to speak into the radio to avoid startling the crew member in case he was still alive. This is Ian Nielsen. Does anyone from the ISS-14 copy? As I suspected, there was no response. So I simply said, "We're here to rescue you. Try not to move while I attach the safety cord to you." I got close enough to the astronaut to grab his hand and turn him around. I saw a man under the helmet, seemingly sleeping peacefully. His forehead and the inside of his helmet had blood on them, and I would have thought he was dead, had I not seen the helmet getting fucked up every few seconds from his steady breathing. He had a name tag on his chest that said Harrington. "I found one. He's alive, but he seems to be injured," I said. "Alright, bring him back, and we'll decide later what to do with the station," Adam said. I detached the safety cord from myself and attached it to the astronaut. I held the cord with one hand and pressed the button on it. It began slowly pulling the both of us back towards the ship. "Alright, I got him. We're going back." I stared at the ISS-14 as it grew distant again, occasionally glancing at Harrington to see if he was still breathing. We had passed by the open airlock, and I kept squinting at it, mesmerized and trying to take a closer look, but it was too dark. When it was out of my line of sight, I glanced back at the astronaut. His eyes were wide open, and he was staring at me. I stared at him for a while, not sure if he was dead or alive, or catatonic. But then, I saw him blink. He started darting his eyes around frantically. I finally broke free of my trance and said, "Hey, it's okay, you're safe now. I'm from the Collector 03. We were sent to rescue you." Harrington mumbled timidly. "Rescue? Yeah, I don't know what happened, but you seem to be the only survivor. I'm bringing you back to our ship." At this sentence, Harrington's eyes widened even more, and he started panting. Within seconds, he was writhing and screaming, shouting incoherent words. He almost shook me off the cord, and I tried calming him down, but it was hard with the cacophony of radio voices asking me what was going on and Harrington's screaming and squirming. "Hey, calm down, calm down." I tried to hold him still, but it was impossible. "Don't do it, don't bring them back." I managed to grab those words among all the incoherence in Harrington's sentences. "There's no one else left of your crew. You're the only survivor," I shouted, but he continued ignoring me. And then he started coughing violently. Droplets of blood splashed the inside of his helmet, adding to the other already dried blood. He had a coughing fit for about half a minute, and he took a few deep breaths. Then his eyes closed, and he seemingly lost consciousness again. "Ian, report, damn it!" Adams shouted over the radio. It took me a moment to recompose myself, and then I answered. "I think he has internal bleeding. We have to hurry. Riley, get the first aid kit ready."
"On it."
Riley responded. Within minutes, Harrington and I were back in the airlock. I pressed the button and closed the external door and pressurized the chamber, putting Harrington in a laying position. "Airlock pressurized. Welcome back." As soon as the internal door opened, the crew rushed in and put Harrington on a stretcher, carrying him to the infirmary. I took off my helmet and, with the suit still on, followed them.
Get a suit off.
Riley's voice echoed through the ship. Harrington was laying on his back on a table, Riley on the side of it, taking off his helmet. I got to the other side of the table and helped them take the suit off him. When I reached to help them take his garment off, the astronaut firmly gripped my wrist like a vice. Our eyes met, and again, he had that same petrified look on his face as before. Please don't do it, just kill me now. He mumbled something, but I couldn't understand him. I leaned in and told him to repeat what he said. You brought them back, he said with a trembling voice. I looked down in time to see Riley take off Harrington's garment, and an audible scream was heard from her, along with gasps from the other crew members. When I looked down, I could hardly comprehend what I was seeing. Harrington had a gaping hole in his stomach, and in it, hundreds of thousands of maggots were squirming around, eating away at his wound. They started hopping, some managing to jump onto Riley's arm. She screamed and violently swatted at them, making a break for the exit. Harrington started coughing again, more violently than before. Just before he stopped moving completely, the blood from his cough spurted over my suit, and I recoiled. When I looked down, I nearly started screaming. Along with the blood, there were crimson maggots slithering towards my head. I swatted at them, disgusted and in a panic at the same time. Get out of here, Adams shouted. We didn't need any more encouragement. We rushed outside, and once everyone was out, we pressed the button to lock the door. We glanced through the glass on the door at Harrington's body. More and more maggots squirmed out of Harrington's wound, impossibly many to fit into his stomach alone, swarming his exposed body parts and feasting away on his remains. Is everybody okay? Anyone get bit? Adams asked. Most of us nodded. Riley, what the hell was that? James asked, beads of sweat forming on his temples. Riley opened her mouth as if to say something, her gaze still fixated on the infirmary. She shook her head without saying anything. How the hell did he get maggots on him? I asked. Even if he had a necrotic wound, there's no way so many maggots could just come out of his stomach like that. Well, the only explanation is he or one of the crew members were infected and it got out of control, Adam said. Either way, it doesn't matter. We have to get in touch with HQ. He turned around and left the corridor, and everyone else started towards the control room after him. Riley and I were at the back, and she started down the corridor. I grabbed her arm, a little firmer than I planned to. She shot me a look of confusion as I stared at her exposed forearm. Riley, those maggots touched you. Did they bite you? I asked, silently enough for others not to hear.
No,
she said and jerked her arm free of my grip and looked at me as if she was offended.
You think I would just jeopardize the whole crew like that?
I don't. I just...
And what about you? The ISS member coughed up some maggots on you.
I'm clean. I'm positive, I said with our eyes locked. She crossed her arms and seemed to calm down. She said,
Well, we should all get tested anyway, but we don't have the necessary equipment here.
Right, our priority should be contacting HQ and getting back. If any of us are infected, they can quarantine us. She nodded and motioned me to join the rest of the crew. We entered the control room and heard Carter's voice on the other end of the room. This is the US Collector 03. HQ, do you copy? This is HQ. What's your situation, Collector? A crackly voice came through the radio. Move aside, Adams commanded Carter and pressed the button on the panel. HQ, this is Captain Adams. We arrived at the site of the ISS-14. Everyone but one crew member died mysteriously. We managed to bring the crew member back on board, but he died shortly after. There was a brief moment of pause before HQ said, What happened? We don't know for sure. The crew member we brought back seems to have been infected. He had flesh-eating maggots under his suit. We had to seal off the infirmary, since we don't know the extent of the threat. Understood, Collector. Right now, your priority is sterilizing the contaminated areas, in case these maggots can do some serious damage to the vessel. Once you've done that, haul ass back to base so we can quarantine and treat you, if necessary. We're sending someone out there right now. Copy that, HQ. Collector out. Adams turned to us with his typical stern look and said, "Well, you heard him. Let's first sterilize the infirmary." Hank pressed a button on the control panel. When nothing happened, he pressed it again. He flipped the switch up and down and pressed the button once more before he started repeatedly slamming it. "What's going on, Hank?" Carter asked. Hank pressed the button a few more times before responding. "The sterilization won't work. Button's not responding." "Try some other rooms," Carter suggested. Hank did that and pressed various other buttons, but still no dice.
Shit, now what?
Riley mumbled. Adams sighed and turned to James. He said, "James, I need you to put on the hazmat suit and decontaminate the infirmary manually." "No fucking way," James rebutted. "Have you seen what those angry little fuckers can do? I'm not going in there. You'll do your job." Adams got into James's face before calming down. "Besides, the suit will protect you." He then said to Hank and Carter, "Start the engine. Might as well get going while we're doing this." He turned around to approach the holographic map on the table when Carter spoke. Captain? The engine won't start." Adams turned back and frowned, now visibly frustrated. "What do you mean it won't start? Start it." "It won't fucking start," Carter blurted. There was a moment of intense silence in the room. Adams rubbed his chin and then turned to me. "Ian, check the engine, but put the protection suit on, just in case." I gave him a silent nod of agreement and left the room. James followed behind me. "This is bullshit." He threw his hands up in the air as we made our way to the lockers. "Suck it up, James. The sooner we finish our job, the sooner we can go home," I scoffed. We donned our protective suits and inspected each other for potential faults. And once we were sure everything was okay, I picked up my tools and we went our merry ways. My job was to go under the ship's bottom floor and inspect the engine, and to do that, I had to remove the floor panel and climb down. As I did so and entered the corridor, I heard James's trembling voice on the radio.
"Jesus Christ. Captain, I'm in front of the infirmary. There's more of them in here."
"What do you mean?" Adams asked.
"I mean, there's millions of them, all over the fucking place. I can't even see Harrington's body anymore. Jesus fuck."
My stomach started twisting into knots. I didn't like this at all. Adams continued.
"James, calm down. Listen, we have to decontaminate the room before they spread to the other parts of the ship. Your suit will protect you. Pull the switch, wait until the process is done, and get out." Alright.
James sighed over the radio.
"I'm going in."
Adams spoke to me and asked how things were going on my end, and I told him I was close to the engine. It was darker down here, so I used the flashlight to illuminate the way in front. The corridor echoed with the heavy thuds of my footsteps as I made my way through, until I reached the panel above my head, which said, "Do not remove."
"James, talk to me,"
Adams said.
"I'm still okay, Captain, but I had to stomp all over them. It's disgusting. They seem to be ignoring me though. Did you pull the switch?"
I pulled out my screwdriver and started to unscrew the panel off.
"Not yet, but I'm almost. Shit!"
James shouted.
"James, what happened?"
Adams asked.
"Something just fucking bit me!"
James yelled.
"James, that's impossible. They can't get through your suit. It's made out of. There's a fucking hole in my boot. Fuck, I gotta get out of here."
My heart was thumping against my chest rapidly at this point, and I had to stop doing my own job. My left hand frozen on the panel and the other on the screw.
"They're in my suit. Oh God!"
James shouted.
"Get out of there!"
Adams shouted loudly. The next few seconds were filled with James's screams over the radio, intermittently getting louder and quieter, until they stopped completely.
"James?"
I shouted, my own voice trembling now. There was no response, however. Adams shouted again.
Ian, get the hell out of there. Alright, let me just fix the engine. Ian, forget the engine and get back here now. Hold on, if I fix the engine we can...
The panel partially fell open when I took the second screw off, and from the gap, hundreds of red maggots poured through, falling to the ground with wet slumps. I recoiled in fear as the maggots continued to pour out and pile on the ground in front of me. They started bouncing one by one, trying to reach me. I screamed and bolted for the ladder. All the while, the voices of my crew members echoed through the radio, asking me what was going on. I climbed up and slammed the floor panel shut, leaving me with only the sound of my own frantic breathing. And then, I heard a thud. And then another. And another. In moments, hundreds of thuds were heard on the panel, like the sound of rainfall. And I could see the floor bending outwards under the pressure. Maggots started crawling from under the edges of the dented panel, and I screamed again, running for dear life.
Ian, respond. Abandoned ship!
I shouted between breaths, looking back behind me. I could already see thousands of maggots on the ground and walls behind me.
What's going on?
Adams shouted.
Maggots! Everywhere! Get to your suits! We have to run!
I ran straight to the locker and took off my protective suit, donning the space one instead. My trembling hands making it difficult to suit up. The rest of the crew members were there in a matter of seconds, putting their own suits on. No time for inspection, get to the airlock, Adams shouted. I ran out first, rushing down the corridor, and stopped when I glanced at the infirmary. James was slumped over the threshold, leaving the door open. He had managed to take his suit off, down to his waist, before he died. Maggots were wiggling inside his empty eye socket, and his teeth were visible due to his lips being completely eaten. His body and the areas in front and inside the infirmary were crawling with maggots, possibly millions, piling atop each other on every single surface of the room, making it look like it was moving with their slithering. Adams pushed me, and I forced myself to look away and continue running. We rushed inside the airlock, and as I turned around, I saw Hank lagging behind, running towards us. His right arm had maggots on it, which he seemingly wasn't aware of. All of us were probably thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it. That's why Adams stepped up and closed the airlock before Hank could get inside. Depressurizing airlock, stand by. Hank slammed the button to open the airlock from the outside, but it wasn't responsive during the pressurization.
Captain! Captain, let me in! They're close!
He looked behind at the mass, which drew closer by the second. Hank, I'm so sorry, Adam said. Hank started screaming and flailing his arms. Maggots started appearing in his helmet, and he threw it off, trying to run in the opposite direction in a desperate attempt to escape. He never stood a chance, since the maggots swarmed up to his knees in seconds and trapped him like quicksand before he was completely covered by them. Riley screamed and cried, trying to put her hands on her mouth, but unable to because of the helmet. Opening airlock. The door opened, and all went silent again. Never before has the inhospitable vacuum of space felt so welcoming. For a while, we floated in silence, processing what just happened. And then Adams spoke up. A sentence which sent a chill down my spine so sharply that, for a moment, I thought that I myself had maggots in my suit.
We need to get to the ISS-14,
he said, somberly. Riley and I shot each other a confused stare, but said nothing. Adams was already well on his way to the airlock of the SS-14, slowly propelling himself with his thrusters. Carter followed closely behind, and soon the entire group of survivors was unanimously headed towards the silent behemoth of a ship.
Captain, there might be maggots in there,
I said through the radio.
I know,
Adams's voice came tiredly through the radio.
But some of us are low on oxygen. We need to replenish it, and if possible, repressurize the station. We need to contact HQ and warn them of the dangers here before those maggots spread.
Even though no one responded, it was clear that we all agreed. After all, we had only two choices: drift around in the vacuum of space until help came, or try to find shelter inside. Both options seemed equally daunting.
What the hell are those things? Space maggots?
Carter asked.
Whatever they are, they can't be allowed to go back to Earth,
Adams responded. We reached the airlock of the ISS-14 and went inside. The entire ship seemed to be dark, so we turned on our belt flashlights.
Should we close the hatch?
Riley asked.
Yeah, might as well, but if the station is infected, we might have a better chance surviving in the vacuum. So be ready for a quick venting,
Adam said, slowly propelling himself deeper into the station. Carter clicked the button to close the exterior airlock door, and once we were inside, he closed the interior one as well. Adams went ahead, the corridor illuminated by his flashlight like a wave of light. We followed him, nervously jumping at every tiny detail on the walls which resembled maggots or seemed like it was moving.
All the doors are open, except the control room,
Adam said.
Yeah, so?
Carter asked.
They may have vented the station from there. Common procedure is that in case any venting needs to be done, all astronauts are to put on their suits and head to the control room. Well, let's see if anyone is inside,
I said. Adams nodded and pressed the button next to the door. A message popped up that said, "Warning, pressure inside the room is higher than the pressure outside. Do you wish to equalize pressure?" Adams clicked on yes. "Equalizing pressure, stand by." The message blinked on and off for a few minutes, and I felt myself becoming heavier gradually as the gravity adjusted, until all four of us were with our feet on the floor. The display turned green as it said, "Pressure adjusted. Warning, emergency power online. Oxygen production offline. Please use emergency oxygen stations to replenish your oxygen." The door slid aside, and we were met with the dim red glow of the control room. Immediately, we saw the body of an astronaut lying face down in the corner of the room. Riley rushed to the crew member and turned her to herself, but her look of vague hope turned to disappointment.
She's dead.
The rest of us approached and saw the astronaut's face. It was a young woman, no older than 30, blue in the face, but despite the color of her skin, she looked like she was sleeping peacefully. Her name tag said, Moody. "She's holding something," Carter said. We glanced down and saw what looked like a camcorder in her hand. Adam snatched it and opened it, and the rest of us gathered around him. There was a folder open, and Adams highlighted the first video by date. It started playing. The video was from the perspective of one of the astronauts, male, judging by the voice. He was hovering above the ISS and zooming in on something on top of the ship. When he zoomed in enough, it became visible that there was some sort of red egg floating around. If he was saying anything, we couldn't hear him in the vacuum of space. The video cut out, and the next frame showed the astronaut gently holding the object from the previous footage in his hand. The red egg had veiny marks on it, and it was slightly bigger than the astronaut's palm. The astronaut flipped the egg from side to side, examining it curiously. The video ended there. Adams played the next video. The frame showed the egg from before, now in a glass display case inside the station.
What the hell is that?
The person recording, now a female scientist, asked.
No idea,
Another voice responded.
Harrington found it outside, and HQ wanted it brought back.
What if it's dangerous?
The female astronaut asked.
Well, whatever it is, it won't break this case. Nothing can. The scanner shows no signs of activity inside the egg.
A third voice said. The camera zoomed in on the egg before the video ended abruptly. Adams played the next one. This video showed the same room as before, but now the camera was placed on the desk, since we could see Moody sitting by it, facing the camera.
Base wants the egg tested. They don't want to risk bringing the egg to Earth, so I've been appointed as lead scientist. My job is to monitor the egg and conduct tests to see what's inside. So far, there's nothing strange about the egg itself. Maybe it's not even an egg. I'll continue to run tests.
She reached out for the camera, and the video ended. The next video showed the same scene, and a visibly more tired Moody. She rubbed her eyes and faced the camera, before saying,
Another egg was found today. Nelson was performing a module check when he saw it. Despite initial skepticism, the egg will be taken back to base for study. There were apparently more, and all seemed to be coming from one direction. There may be a nest close by. As for this one, there seems to be some signs of minor activity inside. Hard to tell what it is though. Whatever it is, it could be our actual first contact.
She ended the video. I heard Carter mumble, "Oh shit," under his breath. Adams played the next video. The footage showed the same egg from before, but it was now cracked at the top and on the side. Tiny crimson maggots were squirming around the display case lazily.
What are those?
Moody asked.
Alien worms?
A voice next to her asked.
Was the egg rotten?
She inquired.
Didn't look like it. Maybe the worms are supposed to hatch out of it. No idea.
One of the maggots started slithering on the glass, moving upwards. The camera zoomed in, and I clearly saw the bodies of the maggots crawling over each other. It looked like they had tiny hairs on their bodies. The video ended. I felt itchy all over my body, unable to shake the feeling of bugs crawling all over me. The next video showed Moody in the same room. There was visibly a lot more maggots inside the display. She said,
They are reproducing at an enormous pace. The maggots seem to be dormant in the vacuum, but able to survive. Keith followed the trace where the eggs are coming from, and he says he found their nest close by. It seems that this is really going to be first contact. He hasn't responded to our call yet though, so the signal must be bad there.
The video ended, and there was only one more video remaining. Adams played it. The frame was shaky, but we saw what was clearly the room from the previous footages. However, this time the glass display was broken, and there were countless maggots all over the place, covering every inch of the floor and every piece of item and furniture inside the room. The egg inside the display was broken into pieces now, and barely visible from all the maggots crawling over it.
Moody, move!
Someone shouted. Moody panted in panic and pressed the button to lock the door. She pointed the camera left, down the hallway, and thousands more maggots came into view. Moody turned around and ran. A blood-curdling scream was heard somewhere before it was completely silenced. Moody ran inside the control room and turned around. Harrington came into view with his spacesuit. He pressed the button to lock the door from the outside and shouted,
Moody, vent the station!
Wait, what about you and the others?
No time, I'll open the second airlock. Get ready!
He ran out of view, ignoring Moody's plea to stop. Another scream was heard over Moody's radio. She stood in the room, panting in panic and looking over her shoulder.
Moody, do it!
Harrington shouted over the radio. Moody approached the panel in the corner of the room and opened it, revealing a big switch. She grabbed it and held it hesitantly.
Moody, don't! I can't get to my spacesuit!
Another crew member's voice came through.
Do it!
Harrington shouted. Moody was audibly crying by this moment. With hesitation, she pulled the switch down and heard another short-lived scream. The video cut out and came back the following second, showing Moody in a dim-lit room with red light, gasping for air.
She pointed the camera towards herself. Tears were streaming down her face. She exhaled with a trembling voice and said,
Oxygen production was damaged. I only have a few minutes left. HQ doesn't know what happened, and everyone else is dead. All of the maggots have been vented out, but the nest is still out there. Whoever finds this, you have to destroy the nest. It's close by. The coordinates are on the wall here.
She pointed the camera at a wall, and we unanimously looked at the numbers on the wall, which were still there. Moody took a few shallow breaths and said,
Also, please send my final message to my sister.
She started sobbing more.
Haley, I'm so sorry. You were right. Space is really bad. I wish I'd listened to you. I'm glad Mom isn't alive to witness this. I'm sorry for being so stubborn. I'll always love you, little sister.
She sniffled and cried before turning off the camera. The four of us stared at the blank screen in silence. Jesus, Carter muttered. So, what now? I asked. Adams sighed and gently placed the camcorder next to Moody's body. We're going to the nest, he said with determination. Whoa, Captain, you can't be serious, Carter said. Carter, you can stay if you like, Adams said and looked at Riley and I. Same goes for you too. Wait for rescue if you like, but I have to finish this. No way, Captain. I'm coming with you, I said. Riley agreed to come too. So in the end, Carter threw his hands up in the air and said he'd come along as well. Alright, then let's fucking do this, Adam said. We replenished our oxygen tanks and found whatever could be used as a weapon. There were no guns aboard the ISS, which probably wouldn't be useful against maggots anyway. So instead, we grabbed lighters, deodorant cans, and pieces of cloth that we could set on fire. Before we knew it, we were back outside in the vacuum of space. Adams led the way, propelling himself through, with the three of us following closely behind.
How the fuck do we even know how this place looks?
Carter asked.
For all we know, it could just be a floating nest and long gone from that location. No choice,
Adams replied.
We gotta find that thing. If not us, someone else will have to do it. We're not paid to do this sort of. Carter, if you're just gonna bitch the whole time, then turn back and get the fuck out of here,
Adams shouted through the radio. Carter hasn't responded. We flew in silence for a while, until Riley spotted some tiny object in the distance. It looked round and reddish.
What the fuck is that?
I asked, immediately suspecting to one thing. Adams flew there and grabbed the object, inspecting it curiously. He turned to us so that we can observe it as well.
An egg, just like in Moody's footage,
he said, letting the egg float. Indeed, it looked exactly like the red veiny egg in the video. I saw more details than in the video though. In addition to the bulging veins, there were thin, orange ones on the inside, visible on the surface. It reminded me of the time when I cracked open an egg, and instead of the yolk, saw an embryo of a chick. Adams grabbed the spray can and lighter.
Everybody, back up,
he said. He flicked the lighter on and the flame appeared, moving not upwards like in normal gravity, but dancing in various directions, almost like when blood starts to flow underwater. Adams put the spray can behind the flame and pressed the button. Although we heard no sound, we saw the wave of flame expanding like a torch and setting the egg aflame. Immediately, we saw little maggots wiggling out and going for the captain. But Adams didn't let up with the flame. His face intense with revenge and anger, the flame reflecting from his helmet. He was practically burning them to a crisp. Even after the egg was nothing more than a burnt shell, he continued burning it.
Captain, you got him. Let's go,
Carter said. Adams finally let up, observing his artistic piece of work, before letting out one more gust of flame and then turning around.
Let's go,
he said emotionlessly. We were far ahead of the ISS by this point, a good 20 minutes since we left. The station seemed tiny from here, and we were mere specks of dust floating through space, surrounded by miles and miles of vast nothingness.
Captain, we still on the right track?
I asked. Adams kept quiet for a moment and then pointed over yonder. Riley, Carter, and I looked in the direction he was pointing, and there it was. Some kind of an object in the distance. It was hard to tell what it was, but it looked rectangular, human-made, and not crude like a piece of rock from space. We started seeing eggs more frequently floating past us, but there were too many to deal with individually, so we just let them be. As we got closer, it became clearer that the object we were seeing was indeed like a cube. Greenish in color, with black lines going along the edges like columns.
Is this it?
Carter asked. It was big, a lot bigger than I anticipated, easily towering over 50 feet on each side. Right in front of us was a rectangle-shaped entrance near the bottom part of the cube object. One egg floated out of there, spinning in the air. Adams pushed it out of the way and illuminated the entrance. It had the same kind of green and black colors like on the exterior, but nothing noteworthy about it. He looked at me and gestured with his head for me to go in. I did as he said, and gasped in awe at what I saw. The interior looked exactly like the exterior, but the greenish lines that went along the walls glowed in color that gave off the vibe of radioactive material, showering me and my crew members in sickly green. I realized that there were eggs strewn about, firmly stuck on the walls in some sort of gooey substance.
What the fuck? This must be the nest. Captain, are you seeing this?
Carter asked. When we got no response from Adams, we shot around to see what was going on. Before we realized what was happening, the exit slid shut and Adams was out of sight, the green glowing brighter now.
Captain!
I shouted. For a moment, there was only silence. And then Adams spoke.
I'm sorry, guys. I didn't want to do this. You see, these worms aren't just flesh-eating parasites. The maggots can devour things quickly, yeah, and they can reproduce quickly too. But they are also intelligent beyond our comprehension.
My heart was beating fast at this moment, and I got a really bad feeling.
Captain, open this fucking door!
Carter slammed on the wall, which was previously an open space. Adams continued.
They can get inside the host and devour him from the inside out in a matter of seconds, taking control of the body. You see, Adams wasn't careful enough when evacuating the ship, and the three of you didn't care enough to check him for any marks. I can't allow you to stop this process.
Carter started slamming the door harder, Riley visibly panicking, and I kept glancing around to see if any of the eggs had hatched by any chance. Just then, a voice came over our radio.
ISS-14, this is HQ. Is anyone still alive there? HQ, we're here! We got a situation here!
I shouted into the radio. A moment later, HQ said again.
This is HQ. Is anyone alive out there?
I tried again, along with Riley and Carter, but they couldn't hear us. And then Adams spoke.
HQ, this is Captain Adams of the Collector. There are no other survivors. I'm on my way to you now. Copy that, Adams. We'll stand by.
HQ said. We tried contacting HQ again, but to no avail. Either Adams jumped our signal, or it was blocked inside the structure. Just then, I caught something with my peripheral vision. One of the eggs had started to hatch, and maggots were wiggling out of it.
We gotta get out of here,
I said. Carter was still busy slamming the door and trying to contact HQ, unaware of the eggs hatching.
Carter, we gotta get the fuck out now,
I said. He finally realized the severity of our situation, and all three of us started propelling each other through the structure. using spray cans and lighters to burn everything and anything that got anywhere close to our vicinity. We had the advantage of the structure being spacious and the worms not being able to jump around in vacuum, so we were relatively safe, except for the ones that made their way accidentally to us. The structure seemed to wind around as a corridor, eggs and slime decorating most of its interior. I started to lose hope, and I thought this place would become my tomb, leaving my body to float in the vacuum of space for hundreds of years. But then we saw the exit in the form of a square-shaped hole. We propelled ourselves out, turning around only to burn the rest of the maggots that stumbled outside.
Shit!
Carter screamed, swatting at his own hand and trying to grab something, but it was too late. There was already a tiny hole in his suit, letting out a steady gust of wind. Carter grabbed his helmet with both hands. The shocking realization of what he was about to do hit me, and I tried to stop him.
Carter, no!
I shouted, but it was too late. Carter twisted, and his helmet came off. Instantly, his face started contorting into one of palpable pain and changing colors. I tried to put his helmet back on, but he pushed me and threw the helmet further away. You'd think that dying in the vacuum of space is a relatively quick process, but it's not. It's very slow and very painful. Carter convulsed, his face turning blue and bloating, his eyes turning bloodshot for what felt like minutes, until he stopped moving completely and was left floating in the air as a ragdoll.
Ian, we gotta go.
Riley sobbed, and I knew she was right. We tried contacting HQ, but it didn't work. So we simply flew back to the ISS as fast as we could. We had to stop Adams, or whatever those maggots controlling him were. After around 20 minutes, we finally got back and saw another ship waiting nearby. We were greeted by the crew members who needed a few minutes to understand what we were rambling about. When I finally asked them about Adams, they said he already left with the other team. We tried to explain what had happened, but no one believed us. We had to tell them to go and check out the structure for themselves, but to bring flamethrowers. That took another hour, and when they came back with 2 men less, they asked us to tell them everything. Adams had returned to Earth by then. When we got back, we got information that he volunteered to be on the team which is running tests on the alien egg brought back to Earth. Again, they refused to believe our claims that he was being controlled by space maggots. So we knew we had to take care of things ourselves. It's been 2 days, but Riley and I managed to get to the base. I'm afraid that this will be my last mission though. I discovered a tiny wound on my right hand when I got back to Earth. There is no pain or anything, but something is wrong. I can feel it. First, I lost control of my hand, and now my entire right arm. It's moving, but not by my own action. I can already feel part of my neck doing involuntary movement, so I'm afraid I'm a goner. Adams needs to be stopped and the egg destroyed. Even so, I feel like this is a losing battle that we're fighting. That structure out in space was made by someone or something other than humans. And they put those eggs there for a reason.